best place to hide the truth is in the pages of a book.
Maybe we should just read. Maybe we should just read.
Welcome to Hayes Reviews. Well, hello there, and a very good evening from a hot, sweltering UK. I hope you're doing well out there. This is Nick, creator of Hayes Reviews. We're back for another live stream, live reading tonight, continuing with Endgame, The Hidden Agenda 21 by Vernon Coleman. And I've had a bit of a hiatus, so it's very nice to have those of you tuning in tonight live. We got Frank, we got Tammy over on YouTube already, which is fantastic indeed. And anybody watching on the replay, please remember that you can use the pinned comment below the video, and it's got timestamps in it. And if you want to jump ahead to a specific part of the video, then you can use that for that purpose. Endgame is a really great book. It covers so many different topics. It's more like a reference book, kind of like a dictionary or a thesaurus or an encyclopedia than it is telling a story. Vernon Coleman has written the book in alphabetical order, and the topics are very wide-ranging. There's some quotes in there from some famous people, and he's given anecdotes from his own life. He's had a very interesting life. He's been through many different versions of himself, including publishing, including being a doctor, and then most recently had a stint, and is continuing actually, a stint as a truth-telling freedom fighter, let's say, by making videos to help wake people up and make people aware of the agendas that are unfolding around us. And one of them, the one that this book focuses on, is Agenda 21. He's written many books. They're available on Amazon. I encourage people to go and buy physical copies. That puts a few pennies in his pocket. But also, having the physical book, as I always say, it's a hedge against censorship. You can pass it around, you can read to people. If the internet goes dark, if you get kicked off it for some reason, maybe you say some hurty words and you offend somebody who gets offended, which, you know, that can get you arrested and put in prison and cancelled and all that other good stuff these days. You never know. But if that does happen, you still have a physical copy of the book. You can still use it to explain to people what's going on and let them know about the agendas that we are living through. Because I was saying to a friend earlier today that they were sending me some information about digital ID, and this friend was saying, like, this is it, you know, this is the thing that we have to fight. And I said, yeah, but I think really the battle is in the hearts and minds of those closest to us, right? It's about changing the beliefs and the worldview, and therefore the actions and the behaviors of the people who are nearest and dearest to us. Maybe not dearest, but nearest, because it's really about getting this out horizontally to the people who we can influence, who we can communicate with in the real world. Because it's all well and good us sitting online and making videos and broadcasting things out, but we know that information is tightly controlled, and this stuff tends to end up in an echo chamber, and it doesn't necessarily get to the people who most need to hear it. But the people who do hear it can then take this information, take the evidence presented in the books, and then go out into the real world. And that's where the real battle is. It's trying to change the hearts and minds of the people who don't see what's going on or don't care about what's going on. And that is the hardest part of the whole thing. That is the most difficult fight, really. Because once you get enough hearts and minds aware to these agendas and refusing to cooperate and comply, then the agendas just fall apart. They fall away, right? Much easier said than done, of course. And there's many other things that we have to be doing alongside that, such as planting and growing food, such as stocking up, making ourselves useful, learning skills, building networks, and planning ahead, and hooking up with other people in real life in order to build a bit of a safety net for when times get tough. We look and see throughout history that times have pretty much always been tough. I think the bit of history that we've lived through, and I say we, I'm assuming people are sort of my age, maybe a little bit older, maybe slightly younger, but certainly the last, I don't know, I want to say 50 years or so, 60 years, things have gotten steadily better in terms of material comfort. But I think we're kind of on the edge of that ring out as we barrel into this digital panopticon AI mediated system of control that is just being rapidly constructed and forced upon us without our consent, without our I should say actually it does have our consent, because the more we use it, the more we accept the systems and the programs and the technology and the devices, that's basically giving consent. So we are consenting to it. And that's one of the hardest things for people to wrap their mind around as well. It's your participation is consent, and your silence is taken as consent as well. So if you don't speak out, you don't say something, you don't put yourself in those uncomfortable situations where you say, no, I'm not doing this, and trying to get other people, set that example for other people, then it's taken as consent and it carries on rolling out unhindered. But we all know that age-old saying, the tallest blade of grass gets chopped first. So it takes guts, balls, bravery, willpower, care, determination, fortitude, all these qualities. It requires all those to make a stand and to speak out and to communicate and to point these things out and to, switch the television off and point out to other people that they're just pissing away their time on entertainment when there's really important things going on that affect not only us who are alive today, but also those who will be born in the future, right? The systems that are being built and put into place aren't really necessarily aimed at us. They're really aimed at those who are unborn, the future generations who are yet to arrive here and find out what Earth's all about. And that's a topic that's very close to my heart and on my mind at the moment, and explains why I haven't been doing these broadcasts for a while. And that is because I have been welcoming my firstborn son into the world. And I've got a little picture here that I'll show you. This is my entire preamble ramble today. I don't have much in the way of news or resources to look at, but I do have this picture to show you. Let me get this browser out of the way. And this is William. And I want to explain why I haven't been broadcasting for the last 3 weeks. Is because I have been taking care of my newborn son, who arrived with us earlier this year, safe and sound, and what an adventure it has been so far. How exciting. I am absolutely over the moon. He's healthy, he's happy. Most of the time he's happy. He's not happy when he's hungry, right? Or he doesn't sound happy, at least. But we're keeping on top of that. We're making sure he's well fed and well looked after, and he's enjoying the heat as well. And that's where I've been. So apologies to those of you who have been eagerly awaiting the next installment of this broadcast series, but I have literally had my hands full. So that's why it's taken us a while to get around to doing this. But I just wanted to show you what I've been up to. I've been busy. I have been busy. I have been productive, and I have been working on something very worthwhile and very important, of course, right? I think now that my whole life has changed, my whole world has changed, all my values have been adjusted, my priorities have all been changed as well, and I'm going on this emotional roller coaster. It is extremely it's hard to put into words unless you've been through it, unless you've had a similar experience. I don't think you're really going to be able to comprehend what it's actually like. And a lot of people, they'll say, "Oh, nice, now you're up to your armpits in dirty nappies and listening to all the crying." Ha ha Don't listen to those people, right? Listen to the people who tell you how beautiful and amazing and uplifting and just enriching it is to welcome a new human being into the world, to see how pure and innocent they are, to see how communicative they are, how fully formed they are. We think of babies as sort of blank slates and just kind of useless, and they can't even hold up their own head, and they're just dependent, and they just make a lot of noise, but they have personality. They have these like amazing ability to express what they're feeling. They're very, and they're in the moment as well. They're not worried about the past. They're not worried about the future. They're just teaching you how to be here now with them, right? And it's an amazing time to be spending this time with my son. And honestly, it makes everything else seem kind of pointless and not really worth doing, especially my job. I'm spending time shuffling pixels and moving them around in my day job, and I'm thinking I could be, in there with my son, just spending time with him and getting to know him. And it makes work seem a lot more frustrating. But we got to pay the bills, and we have to make sure that there's food on the table, particularly when there's an extra mouth to feed now. And so, of course, I will continue to show up to my day job. But certainly, it's an adjustment of what is important, and you realize that now you've got some skin in the game. Right now you really have to do your best to talk about what matters, to put your voice out there, to try and bring truth to people, because that's really what it's all about, helping people align with truth, right? So that's where I've been. And I hope you will forgive the absence, but we're back today. We're going to do another reading from Endgame, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I don't, as I said, have much prepared in the way of a preamble ramble. We're going to dive straight into the book, see how far we get. I might cut this broadcast a little bit short. We'll see. At the minute, I'm quite sleep deprived. It's not that I haven't been sleeping, but the sleep is broken. And after a few weeks, coming up to a month of that, you start to feel it. Your mind's not as sharp. You forget what point you were trying to make, and you certainly appreciate naps a lot more. But luckily, that's one thing that my son has got in common with me, is he's very good at napping, and he likes napping. And so we try to snatch those father-son nap times together whenever we can, right? So yeah, good to see Ashley as well. Ashley Styles and Timmy over here in the YouTube chat. And it's quiet on Odyssey. It's quiet on Rumble. But that's all right. This is my first broadcast in a while, so I wouldn't expect it to be popping off. But good to see you all. I did have a couple of things I was going to talk about for the Preamble Ramble, but I didn't have time to get the web pages up and look at the actual websites that are relevant. But a couple of things. One of them was the recent ruling or vote or proposed amendment that went through here in the UK about abortion. And when you look up the headlines for this, it was all about decriminalizing abortion. And that's what every single headline says. It's like, abortion to be decriminalized. Abortion has been decriminalized, right? And what it means is that women can now abort their baby right up until birth, and they won't be prosecuted for doing so. They can't do it, like they can't get help to do that. But should they find a way to do it and carry out that act, then they won't be prosecuted. It's not a prosecutable offense anymore. This is really like disturbing. It's a baby step, because they haven't changed the process for getting help by way of medical professionals to get the abortion. So that process remains the same. They still need 2 doctors to sign it off. After a certain point, you still need a very legitimate reason. But it's this decriminalization aspect of it. It means that there's going to be more scope there for women to go off and find a way to abort their baby closer to the birth date, because now there's not that disincentive of, oh, I might be arrested and charged with a crime for doing this, right? And I don't know how many more cases this will lead to, but it's just an example of how things change in a very stepwise manner. Just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit. And, in maybe 5-10 years from now, there'll be another proposed amendment, and it'll be changed a little more. And it never gets rolled back. It never gets things never get removed. They just get added little by little by little, and it's that totalitarian tiptoe, as David Icke likes to refer to it. It's the very gradual Fabian way of changing things, and I don't think it's a step in the right direction, to be honest. The reading that I did suggested that it'll affect, I don't know, I think it said something like 6 women had been charged under this law. So that's a very, very, very tiny number of people. And one thing that was totally absent from the discussion in the articles that I looked at was the fathers, right? They didn't even get a mention. So let's say you're a young man and you get lucky with a young lady, and you are blessed with a child growing out of that union, and the young lady decides she doesn't want it. Then you, as the man, as the father, you really have no right and no recourse. And even if that young woman goes off and aborts this baby the day before it's due, you don't have that. That's not a crime for her to do that to your unborn child. I'm speaking from the perspective of a father here, right? So that was notably absent. All it talked about was it's the woman's pregnancy, and they just said it's the woman's pregnancy in the articles, and we need to decriminalize it because it's terrible that you would criminalize the killing of an unborn human being. So very dark stuff. That was one thing that went on that I was going to talk about, because it feeds very nicely into the topic of this book, which focuses on population, depopulation, and that whole agenda of population management as well, and rolling out the sustainable austerity, sustainable development goals, but I call it sustainable austerity. These are all rules and regulations and mechanisms by which our lives are going to be controlled. And so it's about population management. And this is one aspect of population management, right? You don't want you want to have a good, tight control over the reproduction of your herd. Let's say you're a farmer and you've got a herd of grazing livestock, then you want to be very much in control, right? You don't want them to breed and breed and breed and get to such a large volume of animals that you can't support them, and they can break out of your fields and you can't feed them, and they start dying, and all manner of chaotic things start happening, right? You as the farmer, you want to keep a tight control over that population so that you can keep benefiting from the product, right? The meat, the milk, the wool, whatever it is that you are, whatever your business model is. And that's what it's like. From the point of view of these useless elites, they have a business to run. They got a bunch of us, human sort of cattle, and they have us in various holding pens, otherwise known as countries and nations, trading blocks and unions. But all of these things really are just different experiments of population management. And that goes to the political system, the religious system, the financial system, the cultural creation. Every aspect of the globe, every country, every place is roughly the same thing going on, just tweaked and altered slightly to more appropriately manage that particular population in that area. And so this whole question of reproductive rights and who gets a say in what happens, it's all convoluted and messed up. And my advice would be to leave the government out of it and keep it between you and your partner as much as you can. Learn, read some books, because there's a way to go through this whole process of having a child that doesn't require medical intervention, because animals do it in nature all the time, and we did it like that for most of history, I think. It seems the human race wouldn't be where it is today if it had to rely on this big convoluted system of medical interventions in order for babies to be healthy and successfully brought into the world, right? And I'll say right now that I've had very close contact with the NHS here over the last 9 months, and for the most part, the people we met, I'd say 70% were fantastic, really caring, kind, warm-hearted people, genuine. They let us make decisions. They didn't pressure or force us either way. But at the same time, you could see how certain people would come in and try and lead you down a path, let's say. In particular, there was a doctor who was encouraging us to accelerate the birth, right? He was saying, you're here now. We'd gone in, and he said, you're here now. Why don't we just get on with it? They were literally his words. Let's just get on with it and induce the baby and have it. And we just looked at each other and we said, no. Like the baby will come when he's ready, when the time is right. And we trusted in my wife's innate wisdom of her body and her biology and the baby's as well to know when that time would be. And it all went very well doing that. But there were people there who were like, well, you're here, let's just get on with it. And they just want to, there's like a conveyor belt, and they want to put you on there and give you this one thing, and then that requires another intervention, and that requires another, and it's a domino effect that cascades and leads into all these other interventions, right? So they don't really want you to know that you could do the whole thing on your own at home without any of those interventions. But that's possible. I know people who have done that. And for all our preparation and all the care and that we put into it, I'd say it went 85% successfully the way we wanted it to. But in the heat of the moment, things happen and there's a lot of going on and it's chaotic, and we were sleep deprived because one thing and another. So it didn't go perfectly. But now that he's here, I would say it went perfectly. I wouldn't change a thing. And he is bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. There's not a blemish on him, and it's great to have him in the world. So that was one thing I wanted to mention. This recent change. And then so you've got that recent change, that proposed amendment to the the start of life, and then on the other side of things, at the end of life, you've got the assisted dying stuff that's being brought in. It's running rampant now in Canada. Something like the fifth or sixth leading cause of death is the medically assisted dying. And again, that's another little step. It'll start being, it's only for people who are in chronic pain and they really can't get out of it, and they have all their wits about them, and they've made this decision, and we'll assess them, and eventually it'll just be, I think Futurama showed us this. They had like a suicide booth, and it's just on the street. And forgive me if it's not Futurama, but I feel like it's a cartoon of some sort. But they had a suicide booth, and you just walk in there and you got to pay. Obviously, you got to pay, right? So you put your money in the slot, and then boom, it does you in, and it's game over, right? So that's like the slippery slope. But it all has to start with just a little step. Oh, we'll just bring it in for this group, and then that gets widened and broadened, and then it gets the process gets privatized, and now you've got like suicide by Amazon, and you just place your order, and then a little robot flies up to your house and whatever finishes you off. So they're doing this kind of pincer attack from both sides. From the beginning of life, they're trying to end as many of those, make it as frictionless as possible to end those, and then at the end of life, the elderly people, the ones who are not paying into the system anymore, the ones who are not productive by way of paying taxes, because that's all productive means in this world is, you're paying taxes, therefore you're productive. Well, we can get rid of them as well, because they're just taking from the system now, they're not paying into the system. And then if we can just kind of narrow it down so that we got a Logan's Run type scenario where people die before they get into retirement and start withdrawing from the system, that would be good. And so it's very insidious and it's very creepy. And the other thing that happened as well that I was going to mention and talk about was that MPs redefined their job title. And so if you go to the Gov.uk website now and you find out what do MPs do, they don't represent you, and they really don't. They just make up whatever they want to do because there's no job description, and there are rules, but there are no rules. Like it literally says that. It says they follow rules, but there's no rules as to what an MP does. So, I mean, that sounds crazy that I say that. So I feel like I might have a quick look to see if I can pull it up. Let's have a look. So gov.uk MP job role. But this has been changed recently. It's been changed many times, no doubt. But apparently where it is now, what do MPs do? Oh, here we go. I found it. That was relatively painless. I found it quick. But I haven't highlighted it, so we'll do it on the fly. What do MPs do? It does say represent local people. There you go. Fantastic. So maybe enough people kicked up a stink, and they put that little bit back in. But there was certainly a version of this release that had removed that. But it says how and where they work is for them to decide. There is no statutory job description. They must abide by standards of conduct, rules, and conventions. How an MP decides to divide their time depends upon the schedule of business, their family responsibilities, or whether they've taken additional things, blah, 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 blah. So actually, it's changed, I think, since since the most recent edit. And that could be just down to people noticing. People notice and they talk about it and they share it around. And it's like, okay, we've got to change it back. But what I will say is this is the problem of the internet, right? This is the problem of websites being editable. You can change something on a website at any time. So you can change it and leave it there for a day and see if anybody notices. Oh, nobody said anything. Therefore, they consent to the change. Or you can make that change and then lots of people notice and spread it around and kick up a stink and a fuss. And then it's like, okay, we've got to change this back. But the fact that it was changed suggests where they'd like to take things. But that was something I was going to talk about as well. But unfortunately, I wasn't organized enough to grab screenshots. But you could probably go on the Wayback Machine to see the different changes in the edits over time that they've made to that. Be worth doing. Kelly Norris says, suicide booths were in a Lovecraft story. The booths were in Washington Square Park in New York City, if I remember right. Oh, thank you. Thank you for... I haven't read a lot of Lovecraft. I'm going to check Suicide Booth quickly and see if I'm right in remembering that it was in Futurama. Yeah, it is Futurama. There you go. What a useful thing to be able to remember. Futurama is a kind of Simpsons type thing. There it is. Suicide Booth, 25 cents. Yeah. So you just pop in there, you do your you give them your 25 cents and boom, finishes you off. So that is it. I was correct in remembering that, which is good. Nice to know my memory is not completely trashed yet. Okay, we got Kelly Nora, LJ, Lee Blunt as well over on YouTube. Good to see you all here. Tommy says, why don't they call it what it is? Murder. Yes, I agree with that. It's the murder of an unborn human being, but they never get called that. They get called fetuses. But the day before an unborn human is born, it doesn't change that much the day before it's born, and so if you can abort that unborn human and not face any criminal, like, how is that not a crime? I don't get it. But it's not a crime to abort the day before the birth, but the day after the birth, if you kill the baby, that's a crime. Just so that one day makes all the difference, you know. So it's a little step in a direction that I don't think is going to be very surprising to people on this channel following along with this particular book reading. So that's all I wanted to talk about, really. A little improv, made up stream of consciousness preamble ramble for you, but we're going to get into the book and we're going to have a good solid session of reading. We'll see how far we get. Tonight we're cracking on with Q and R and S, the letters that we're up to. And there's some pretty spicy topics coming up. We've got quarantine. We have got Rockefellers, robots, royal family, Klaus Schwab, self-programming computers, George Bernard Shaw. We've got smart cities, smart meters, social credit. Suicide is actually coming up today as well, appropriately enough. Stockholm Syndrome as well. So there's plenty of cheerful topics in tonight's reading to hang about for. So please get comfortable. I will get the book cam set up and then we'll get reading. It's very good to have you all here and it's good to be back. I have missed doing these very much, and having a big break, having a big gap of not doing these broadcasts for a while, I always feel very sort of nervous and a bit rusty. I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't done a live stream for so long. Will I be able to remember which buttons to press? So far, so good, though. I think you can all hear and see me, and that's the important thing. Before we get into it, I'll just mention as well, pinned at the top of the chat, allmylinks.com/HazeReviews. If at any point you feel moved to send me an email or sign up to my social media accounts and stay in touch, or do one of the many other things that you are able to do through the links that I have provided at that one-stop shop, which is allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews. It's worth clicking there and having a look if you want to be more involved, and you're very welcome to do so. So that is where we finished off last time, pubs. And now we're going to be picking up today with quarantine. In the year 2020, the rules about quarantine changed constantly from day to day and from country to country, proving without a shadow of doubt that the quarantine regulations were directed not by scientists, but by politicians. In the UK, the government announced that hedge fund managers and others important in the world of finance would be exempt from quarantine regulations. There were rumours late in 2020 that quarantine camps were being prepared in some countries. It was said, not without cause, that the camps would be used to house dissidents, those who questioned the official line. Looks like we disconnected, looks like we reconnected. Hopefully that wasn't too much of an interruption. It was very creepy at the time, though, a lot of this footage, and showing some of the situations that people were forced to tolerate. They might be told to wait in a room for 3 weeks to see if they developed symptoms. And you can see how the whole thing was really just a big experiment. It was like a test. It was a conformity test to see who would go along with it and who would obey the rules and do what we tell them, and who would be intimidated by the propaganda and the fear-mongering. And that was what the whole thing was. I think that's how the whole thing's best described, is a sort of compliance test. Because as Ian Davis wrote in his book, it wasn't a pandemic; it was a pseudo-pandemic, meaning it had all we were told it was a real pandemic, but actually it was just an illusion that was created through very clever marketing and propaganda, and a whole pre-planned communication strategy, which if there's anyone out there who works in the corporate world, you might have encountered something called change management. And this is when you want to get people in an organization to behave differently. And there's this whole methodology behind change management. It includes nudging, which is, of course, we have a nudge unit here in the UK. And the nudge unit here in the UK, this guy who worked in there wrote a book about it inside the nudge unit. This is David Halpern. And telling you about all the ways that they, for example, the top thing that they're bragging about in the back of the book is how adding one sentence to a tax reminder brought in millions of extra revenue. So they're really putting it to good use, aren't they, to fleece people and steal more of their hard-earned cash. Also increasing the number of organ donors, right? So the market in trafficked human body parts is a black market, but it's alive and well, and it's linked into this organ donation scam. And then also getting people back to work. That might not be a bad thing, but of course being in work leads into more taxation, right? But there it is. It's not conspiracy theory. It's the nudge unit. It's a real thing. And then the nudge unit was inspired by these fellas, Thaler and Sunstein, who wrote the book Nudge, about improving decisions about health, wealth, and happiness. But really, it's all about controlling people without them realizing you're controlling them. So they used the nudge unit, and they used psychological manipulation. They used perception management. They used threats, coercion, bribery. Remember, you could get a cheeseburger if you went and got your injections, or you could, in some countries, I think you could get a blowjob if you're into that sort of thing. You could go and get a sexy massage along with your injections. So all manner of creepy, weird incentives and threats to get you to go along with what you were being told to do. So, people who care about you don't threaten you and manipulate you and browbeat you in this way, right? But that, quarantine, good times. I think a lot of people have erased that whole event from their memories because people don't really talk about it that much. When they do, they just say, oh, remember back during COVID? I always say back during lockdowns because I don't even know what COVID means when you say the word COVID, right? What are you referring to? Oh, that time our governments all locked us in our homes and threatened us to stay at home. And you know, they didn't lock us in our homes, but they did certainly run this massive campaign of fear, and that caused a lot of people to stay put. But yeah, technically they didn't come around and, well, I think they did a bit of that in China, didn't they? Locking buildings and making it impossible for people to get out. But who knows? I haven't been there, and I haven't talked to anyone who lives there. I just saw some video on the internet. And these days, you can't trust videos on the internet. So, continuing. Queues. The length of queues everywhere will increase. Shops will cut back on staff to reduce costs, and the rules will mean that some shoppers will have to wait outside in the cold and the rain before being given the opportunity to go inside, purchase a pair of socks, and queue for the opportunity to pay for them. No one quite understands why the new rules mean that staff in banks, postal sorting offices, and so on have to work shorter hours, but the result is that there will be much longer queues during the hours that these premises are open. Yeah, do you remember they put the colourful spots on the ground to show you where to stand? And they did do this sort of one in, one out policy at the shop near where I was working. And there was a traffic light above the door, and you could only go in once it hit green. And there were spots glued to the pavement outside that you had to stand on. And everyone was there in their mask, looking very beaten down and miserable and fed up, because they knew they were all deep down on a very, very deep subconscious level. They all knew that they were cowards submitting to a bunch of lies that didn't make any sense. And I'm not throwing rocks from a glass house. I did submit to a decent amount of it as well, because I didn't have a clue what was going on in the early days, and it took me a while to dig up the information regarding masks, regarding mRNA injections, regarding germ theory versus terrain theory, all these unanswered questions and all the shaky ground on which the narrative rested. It did take me quite a while to dig that stuff up, and so I was doing my own bit of cowardly compliance in the early days as well. So I'm not trying to make myself out to be some sort of renegade rebel who never complied. Although hats off to people who saw through it from the start and didn't comply. Right, continuing. We got racism. Amidst all the talk about racism in Britain, no one seemed to notice that the ethnic group least likely to go to university is white British. If there is racism in Britain, then it is whites who are the victims. Ooh, that's a bold claim. There are many who believe that Black Lives Matter protests and campaigns were supported by billionaires, politicians, and the police in order to increase racism and close people's eyes to the millions dying in Africa from starvation as a result of the restrictions. The Agenda 21 plan is for 6.5 billion people to die. The first millions will die in Africa of starvation caused by the policies introduced in 2020. Well, I don't know about this starvation being caused in Africa as a result of the policies, but I do know that farming and access to clean, healthy, organic food is under attack, and they just want everything to be printed, 3D printed food in a factory using synthetic vitamins and minerals and chemicals and substances, and have us all just eating this laboratory-grown slop instead of actual food. And that's why organic food, which is really just food, right, is priced out of most people's budgets, and the price of meat is going parabolic over the last 6 months. Every time I go to the supermarket, the price of meat has increased, it seems, and people are just being economically punished and manipulated into having to subsist on very low quality food, quote unquote food, that'll keep you alive, but you're not going to be thriving, you're not going to be healthy. And then when you're unhealthy, you're going to have to go onto the pharmaceutical merry-go-round and start taking all sorts of medicines and having allopathic medical interventions. And the whole system really is there to keep people weak and kill people slowly and gradually over time from in a way that it's hard to pin down exactly what it was that caused it, right? So there's all these different vectors by which you're under attack. No one of them is powerful enough to take you out, so that when you do succumb, people will not be able to pin it down to one thing, right? It's an amalgamation and a sort of what are they called? Full spectrum dominance type of assault that we're undergoing. But quite bold to claim that the whites are the victims in England, but it is true that there's plenty of places where white people are born into very hard conditions, where there's not much opportunity, there's not much money, there's a lot of crime, a lot of drug use. All these kind of conditions do exist for white people born into certain areas and certain demographics, but it's not allowed to set up charities to support them and look after them and raise money for them, right? Because it's racist to do that. But you know, you do it for the non-white people, and that's diversity and inclusivity, and that's great. You get a pat on the back for that, maybe a knighthood. Emma Roy just popped into the chat, waving a hand. Good to have you here. All right, continuing. Ronald Reagan, quote, "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, 'I'm from the government and I'm here to help.'" I didn't know it was Ronald Reagan who said that. That's ironic, him being a former president of the United States, right? Another quote of his, "Freedom is never more than 1 generation away from extinction." That's a good one. All right, recycling. Recycling must go down in history as one of the greatest and most successful confidence tricks. It was designed as a training program to force citizens to be compliant and obedient to the state. The recycling program was always a conditioning program designed to force individuals to become compliant. In the UK, for example, most of the carefully sorted recycling was transported abroad to be buried in landfill, burnt, or just dumped. In 2017, China announced that it would no longer be the world's dumping ground, and British waste was sent instead to Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand. Other waste from Britain has been found in dumps in Eastern Europe. Trying to recover waste plastic is costly and uses a huge amount of water and energy. My comment on this is just the fact that when everything you buy has to be wrapped in plastic, you know that you do not live in a culture or a country that gives 2 shakes of a lamb's tail about the environment, because they would go after these companies and they would force these companies to use something that was biodegradable, that was gentler on the planet. But instead you get these single-use plastics which take forever to degrade, and you have no choice but to buy stuff that is wrapped in this poisonous, toxic, environment-destroying garbage. And yet then they'll tell you, oh, but you have to wash it and sort it and recycle it, and we'll collect it once a week, and that's how we save the planet. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. It's to give you the illusion that you're doing something, and it's to give you the illusion that there is that the ruling class cares about the environment and they're good people. It's kind of like going out and banging pots and pans for the NHS. It's a ritualistic part of a cultish belief in something that is totally misdirected, and you're not making a difference, right? You would, like I said, you would have to go to the source and stop these companies from creating all this single-use plastic in the first place. But they're never going to do that, because the people who own these companies and benefit from the profits these companies make are the people who are making the decisions and running the systems. And so there's a conflict of interest there, and they're never going to resolve that, right? The best thing we could do is boycott them. But good luck trying to organize enough people to create a boycott that would make any difference. People are very fractured, disorganized. It's hard to get them on the same page. And it's like I said at the start, the battle is hearts and minds. And not many people have the appetite or the energy to go out and fight that battle day after day after day, because it is very hard going. All right, we got reducing carbon dioxide levels. Thanks to Agenda 21, governments everywhere are committed to reducing carbon dioxide output to around about 25% below 1990 levels, or reducing them by 40%, or maybe reducing them completely. These absurd and impossible demands are passed on to local governments, which have no choice but to accept them. The thing is that no one knows what carbon dioxide levels were in 1990, or what they were in 1989 or 1979. No one was measuring those levels back then. and no notice is taken of the fact that your town or city may now be twice as big as it was in 1990. The result, of course, is that, in a desperate attempt to keep up with the Agenda 21 demands, your town, city, or village has to cut transport, cut industry, change farming practices, and alter everything about your life. Building permits will be affected by the need to keep reducing carbon dioxide levels. Property companies won't be allowed to build nice little houses with good solid walls, well-built kitchens, and pleasant gardens. Instead, they will have to build towering blocks of flats made out of thin cardboard, and no one will be allowed to have a garden. In the world of the new normal, everywhere will look the same. Hotels will all look identical because they will all be built and furnished according to the same Agenda 21 rules. Quirky bits of architecture have to be pulled down regardless of any historical or architectural value, and cycle lanes must be marked off even if a road is barely wide enough for two small cars. There will be no more crackling log fires in country pubs or hotels. Yeah, he's pretty right about that. The whole the net zero push, that is just the excuse for austerity and deindustrialization, and bringing I say our meaning the wealthy industrialized Western world, bringing the quality of life in these places down and down and down so that it matches that of poorer countries, because that's fair and that's equitable and that's justice. Whether you like it or not, that's what every politician who gets anywhere near to being elected, that's what they have to sign on to and agree with, right? So the next one is regionalization. Back in 2002, I wrote a book called England, Our England, in which I discussed some of the ways in which the European Union was attempting to destroy the United Kingdom in general and England in particular. This was, I explained, all part of a plan to destroy nationalism and sovereignty. An essential part of the EU's political programme was the dividing up of the UK into a number of regions. Plans were put in place to develop regional parliaments. Scotland was already designated a region and given a little parliament of its own, and the same thing happened in Wales and Northern Ireland. Ironically, the nationalists in Scotland and Wales thought that their new parliaments were an important step on the road to independence. What they failed to realise was that their new parliaments were exactly the opposite of independence. They were part of a plan to turn the whole of the UK into a series of regions which would be subservient to the central bureaucracy of the EU in Brussels. There were to be 9 regions in England through the south-east of England, though the southeast of England was destined to be a region with part of France, proving, if there ever was any doubt, that this was a plan to destroy England and create a series of regions throughout the European countries. I mean, it's not hard to realize now that there's a plan underway that has been underway for quite a while to destroy England. Just get out there and have a look at it. Go to the high streets, go to the city centers, go to the towns and villages. Not all of them, not everywhere, but a lot of them. And in many places, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The Labour government tried to sell the idea of regional parliaments to the English people and tried to start the process by opening a parliament in the northeast of England. However, the voters, who were never told that the plan for a regional parliament was part of a plan to break up England, rejected the idea as just another level of unnecessary bureaucracy. The only part of England to be turned successfully into a region was London, which now has its own parliament or assembly. Those regions were the first step towards globalization and a world government. Well, I wouldn't say they're the first step, because the first steps go way back, right? I mean, at least 100 years, if not more. But it's certainly another step on this totalitarian tread towards a globalized world government, one world system. Remembrance Day. In November 2020, the British government introduced restrictions just in time to prevent the marches and meetings traditionally held to commemorate Remembrance Day. Was this merely an accident? I think not. It's far more likely that the plan was to remove another piece of British history and to take away a part of the nation's self-respect and cultural identity. Yeah, so what happened that year as well was that the George Floyd was something happened to him. And this sparked protests across the world. And those protests were allowed to go on unhindered. Those protests in support of Black Lives Matter, they were free from restrictions. The rules about social distancing didn't apply to the people who were on those protests, which was very curious, right? It's very interesting that viruses respect justice and racial equality, and that they don't invade and attack and spread through those kinds of events. Quite an amazing discovery that was made during that time. But yeah, I don't think there's anything accidental about this kind of timing. As I mentioned, as he mentioned in the previous part, England being under attack, then destabilizing and upsetting these kind of events, such as Remembrance Day, which is a very British thing, it's a very English thing. It's very important for a lot of people here to remember, to celebrate the armed forces, people who have ancestors, fathers, grandfathers who were in the armed forces. It's a very important time. To attack that, to wipe it out, to destabilize it, make people feel bad for going to celebrate Remembrance Day, that's another tactic. Let's call it what it is. It's a nudge, right? It's just another nudge. All right, next is renewables. We got Plutonium Productions in the chat as well. Howdy. Good to see ya. Renewables. When you see global warming cultists claiming that renewables now make up a hefty proportion of our energy source, you should remember that by far the biggest renewable source of energy is biomass, by which is meant wood. In the UK, the biomass which is burnt is mostly in the form of wood pellets which come from trees in North America. The trees are chopped down, turned into pellets, and then shipped to the UK to be burnt. Biomass is one of the least efficient, most polluting sources of energy on Earth. It is, however, the darling of the global warming cultists who know little and understand nothing. So how about that? I haven't seen any other information about biomass, where it comes from, but he has made that assertion and that claim a number of times in this book. But yeah, renewable energies, right? Trees, okay. You see how things just sort of go full circle? And we're just on this kind of hamster wheel merry-go-round that's a bit of a joke. All right, the next section is reset. And you might be able to hear in the background my son William. He's hungry by the sounds of it. So the next section is reset. Klaus Schwab and Prince Charles talk constantly of their plan for a great reset. What they mean by this is that they will tear down everything we hold important and then rebuild the world in a way that suits them, give them lots of power, and makes them even richer. Who are they? Well, the list is a long one, but you won't be far out if you start with Prince Charles, Tony Blair, George Soros, Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates, and then mix in a variety of assorted Rothschilds and Rockefellers. And in the usual Bilderberger enthusiasts, the usual Bilderberger enthusiasts, and stir to taste. I'd say that's a good little place to start for sure. Look into any of the names he's mentioned there and start digging. And you don't really have to go scratch too deep below the surface to find a whole manner of crazy, questionable controversies that they've all been embroiled in. Next section is reshaping. This quote appeared in The Guardian on the 16th of September 2020. The author was someone called Mohammed El-Arian. Quote, "We must use the crisis to reshape our society and economy. Now is the time to lock in trends and conditions that will reshape our society and economy for the better over the long term. Which trends and conditions of the crisis would you like to lock in? And which do you think would reshape our society and economy for the better?" The Guardian newspaper has financial links with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Yeah, I remember the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation actually funds a massive amount of the UK's media, including the BBC, Guardian, as they mentioned here, but plenty of others as well. They're pouring loads of money into the media over here because media influences people. It controls their perceptions. And if their perceptions are controlled, then their behavior is controlled. Their thoughts are controlled and their behavior is controlled. So having a good grip and a control over the media and what it publishes is extremely important to keeping your grip on the human herd established and strong. I'm just going to have a sip. We got Lee Blunt, Celine Lyon as well. Frank left us a couple of messages. He says, someone here put a geo-tracker tag in among their green bin recyclables, and guess where the tracker and by extension the green bin load ended up? A city incineration plant. I kid you not. That's a great that's a great thing to do. He says, one of the refuse companies here charge 1, standing charge per year, 2, a charge per bin lift, and 3, a charge by weight for bin contents. Yeah, it's a whole scam. It's a whole money-making scam, like everything. We're really just on this slow march to having to pay for absolutely everything we ever do, and having everything on subscription. Remember during lockdowns, there was this whole talk about having your immune system on subscription, and this is why, like, you'd have to get multiple shots and then get a top-up injection every month, and you got to pay for that. Otherwise, your immune system won't work, and then you get sick and die. I remember this being a conversation going on back then. Lee Blunt says, the truth is always very uncomfortable these days. How many fingers am I holding up? With regards to fingers, I'm going to say 1, and it's your middle finger, and it's pointing at the UK Parliament building. Kelly Nora says, my town requires recycling and requires we pay for pickup. If we don't do it, we are fined. Yeah, so it's like they force you to pay for something, and if you don't pay for that thing, then they pay. Then you have to pay. Like, that's the system you live in. It's like, you got to pay for this thing. I don't want to pay for it. Well, if you don't want to pay for it, you've got to pay for not paying for it. Like, how does that even? And people put up with it, and they carry on handing over the cash and going to work and running faster and faster and faster on the hamster wheel, and vegetating on the settee to a few episodes of Netflix in the evening, maybe a few episodes of Sports Ball, and it's quite alarming, the level of slavery, because it is slavery. You can't do anything. Extortion, that's a good word, Tammy. Yeah, thank you for that. Extortion's a better word than slavery, in that more people will agree with you when you say it. A lot of people have this knee-jerk reaction when you say slavery because they're not tied to a whipping post and picking cotton. They think it's not slavery, right? So extortion's a softer, a better word that more people, I think, would be able to hear when you say it. But it is slavery. If you can't opt out of it, then it's slavery, right? If you're not free to leave and withdraw your consent and say, well, I don't want to be part of this system, I don't want to be part of this game, I'm not going to pay into it, I'm going to go over here and do my thing, thank you very much, then you're forced to participate. And if you're participating under threat of being imprisoned or ruined financially or punished somehow, it's not freedom, is it? Not really. Celine Lyon says, looking good, Nick. Fatherhood does you well. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. It's been intense, but it's been great. It has been really good, and I'm so excited for the next bit. And I was talking to my neighbor the other day, and I had this ongoing joke with my wife that every now and again we'll be spending some time together, and I'll say, we got to really enjoy the time that we're living in right now, because this is the easiest it's ever going to be for us. And it's kind of like that when you got this newborn, and even though it's intense and quite a grueling sort of experience, because you're on this 3-hour cycle where you can never quite rest and relax, and there's a feed coming up and a change and all this stuff, still it's likely easier than some of the challenges that'll be further down the road when we've got other things to worry about. And I remember actually first saying that to her back when we started dating. And I did say to her back then, I was like, if we go the distance, this will probably be the easiest time that we'll ever have. And then a number of years later, a good 5 or 6, 7 years later or something like that, she turned around, she was like, when you said that, you were absolutely right. So yeah, life is just another set of problems. No matter what you achieve, no matter what happens, no matter where you go, you're going to have another set of problems. So the best thing to do is to get good at problem solving and get comfortable at facing problems and solving problems. And get comfortable with that fact. But it's good. You don't want to be static. You don't want to be just going nowhere, facing nothing, trying to achieve nothing, right? Solving problems is a good thing to be focused on and to be doing kind of gives meaning and purpose to your life. Okay, absolute uncalled for tangent there. Apologies, everyone. Let's get back to the book. So the next section is retrojecting, which is a new word to me. So Vernon Coleman says, this ugly word means projecting 21st century attitudes onto the past. Oh, does it? Okay, I'd never heard of that. It is because of retrojecting that statues are being removed if the person immortalized can now be accused of having had a less than blameless life. If you parked your handsome cab on a double yellow line in 1874, then your statue will be dragged down by vandals while the police stand by, exhausting their repertoire of non-violent physical skills by kneeling and cheering at the same time. Okay, this bit I'm going to mark up and put a little tab in there because it's a new word that I wasn't aware of, retrojecting. But also, this whole bit here about statues being torn down is something that I witnessed when I was living in Bristol, and during the lockdowns, we went to the town centre to have a bit of a day out, some coffee, whatever. We were off work, and there's a Black Lives Matter protest, and they brought this little crane thing, and then they pulled down a statue of, I think it was Edward Colston, and then they dragged it to the harbour, and then they chucked it in the waters at the harbour. Yeah. And so that happened. This is what he just described here actually happened. And I saw it happen. And the police did nothing. They just allowed it to go on. And that was the example of the two-tier type system, although I think it's more two tiers than that. But this just, this unfair treatment, because then there were other protests, one of them, lockdown protests, where the police were incredibly heavy-handed and were doing what's known as kettling, where they separate off groups and then they go in there with the riot gear and the horses, and they crack a few skulls and slap some handcuffs on people and just punish people, because it's okay to go out and protest at Black Lives Matter and support Black Lives Matter, because you're allowed to publicly shame white people for being racist, right? So if you have a whole march and have a whole movement and protest about that, that's fine. That's allowed. That's supported and encouraged by the police. But if you are protesting something the government's done, i.e. bombarded you with fear porn, made you terrified of shaking hands and hugging your fellow humans, made you accept the introduction of an unknown mRNA concoction into your body multiple times, if you're protesting that, then that's not allowed. Police don't like you to do that. So it's just double standards, and you got to ask why, and you got to pay attention to these inconsistent, illogical, contradictory positions that are held by the establishment, because that proves their illegitimacy, because they're not aligned with truth, because there is no contradiction in reality, right? And reality is what's true. So, yeah. All right, continuing. Right wing. We are getting the spicy topics today, aren't we? Right wing. Anyone who opposes the very lefty Agenda 21 brand of totalitarianism and fascism is marked as extreme right wing. If you question the principles of communitarianism, which is the modern version of communism, then you must be extreme right wing. If you are right wing, then you must be extreme right wing. I was hoping for a longer section on that, but you get the point. Yeah, it's kind of like how if you aren't on board with the LGBTQCIA agenda and the Save the World, Greta Thunberg, global climate warming change agenda, and all the stuff that goes with that, if you aren't on board with that stuff, then you are literally Hitler. And this is, you hear these sort of lefties say it all the time. And then the righties, because we've got lefties, we've got the righties on the other side. They nobody listens to them. They're in an echo chamber, and they might have some very good points to make. They might have some very legitimate criticisms of these movements that are being forced on us top down through our governments and corporations and NGOs and et cetera, but they get written off as literally Hitler and literally Nazis, and it's just an amazing mind job that's been done on people, that they will just not listen to anything because it gets labeled right wing. And I'll remind people as well that in the opening for the Milner-Fabian conspiracy, which we read, was it before? I think before this one, or no, 2 books back, we did the Milner-Fabian conspiracy. He talks about the word right and what does it mean, and right means correct. It's like the opposite of wrong. Right means, think about your human rights. Think about doing what is right instead of doing what is wrong. Okay, so it's a real genius maneuver to tar and feather this word so thoroughly, to the point where people are like, oh, he's right wing, he's racist, right? and people want to do everything they can to distance themselves from anything that is right wing. And people who do that, are the kind of do-gooders who will probably rat you out and sell you out and allow the complete erosion of the fabric of society. Because by nature, the lefties, the left wing, the left-leaning type crowd, they're always taking the new stuff in, and they're not interested in preserving the past, right? And the right are interested in tradition. They're interested in conservation. That's why you get the conservatives, right? They're interested in legacy and history and ancestry and Remembrance Day, these kind of things. But the left are like, let's barrel on into the LGBTQ, CIA, rainbow, unicorn future, and screw all those old fuddy-duddies who care about things like marriage and raising children and monogamy and going to church and praying, right? Okay, next section, risk-benefit. In theory, risk-benefit means assessing the risk of a particular activity and then making a judgment about the advantages, disadvantages, and dangers. These days, those in authority have turned the idea of risk-benefit on its head. And so, governments want to ban domestic log burners in which the owners often burn fallen branches or chopped up dead trees, but want to replace power stations dependent on oil, gas, or coal with power stations dependent on burning wood, which has been taken from trees grown in another country and transported thousands of miles by boat and lorry. This is, for some inexplicable reason, supposed to be better for the environment. And the principle of risk-benefit is turned on its head, even in more dramatic terms, by insisting that in order to protect themselves from a disease with a low mortality rate, all citizens must avail themselves of an experimental medical treatment which is known to be of very doubtful benefit and also known to be exceedingly dangerous. Yeah, that's a great point, that final bit. Yeah, and it was never really explained or how vaccines work, right? Because it's kind of like, well, you have to get a vaccine to protect me. Okay, but if you've got your vaccine, then you're protected, right? So I have to get my vaccine to protect you. Is that right? But you should just worry about. There's a brilliant clip that on the internet of this little girl, and she's trying to clip her seatbelt in, and she can't do it. And her parent turns around and they're filming her and say, "You need some help?" And she looks up. She goes, "No, thanks." And she's plugging it in. And the mum says, "You okay? You sure? You sure you don't want some help?" And she says, No. You worry about yourself." And me and my wife say this to each other all the time. It's like, you worry about yourself, right? I don't need you to worry about my immunity and my health and my well-being. I'll take care of that. I'll take care of my terrain. I'll take care of my ability to withstand whatever there might be out there in the environment. But it was flipped. And it was turned inside out, and it was like, you need to get this medical intervention to protect other people, which doesn't make any sense at all. Like, if they want protection, they should go and get the intervention. They should go and get the injection, right? That's the whole point. You get the injection to protect, that gives you immunity against the thing. But how does me getting the injection protect other people? Oh, well, it stops you carrying it and transferring it around. Well, it wouldn't matter that I carried it and transferred it around if they were protected by their injection, would it? Right? So these kind of questions, they just were never answered, never addressed. And if you ask them, you're a conspiracy theorist. Okay, we've got another quote here from Michael Rivero. Quote, "Politicians seek to gain wealth and power and authority by taking something that occurs naturally, transforming it and promoting it as a crisis, and then selling the population a solution in exchange for higher taxes and increased authority over their lives. Well, that's a pretty good quote. I don't know about this guy. I never heard of him, but that's a very good quote. Sums it up nicely in a paragraph. Okay, next section is robots. It is a myth, enthusiastically accepted, supported, and promoted by the intellectual classes, that the only people whose lives are threatened by robots are blue-collar workers. While it is obviously true that most factory workers will find themselves replaced by robots, something that has been happening for decades, and that most administrators and bureaucrats will be replaced by computers, the people who are most at risk of losing their jobs are those in the professions. It's difficult to see why there will be any need for doctors or lawyers in a decade's time. Computers make excellent diagnosticians, and robots can perform even complicated surgery more effectively and more speedily and with fewer deaths than human surgeons. Now that doctors and nurses have abandoned their caring role and taken on a colder clinical approach to their work, it is even more certain that they will be replaced by robots which or who can be trained to be compassionate, thoughtful, considerate, and caring. And lawyers? Well, even a modestly sized computer will be able to hold more legal information than any bewigged head. And there can be no doubt that it will not be long before robots will replace solicitors, barristers, and judges. Teachers, too, have no professional future. Teaching will be done online. The world will need one geography teacher, one history teacher, one mathematics teacher, and so on. The rest will either be retrained or simply made redundant. Or they'll be given drugs and computer games, a la Yuval Noah Harari. On the other hand, there are some jobs which it will be difficult to replace with robots. Plumbers, able to struggle under sinks and behind lavatories, and electricians, capable of wriggling along in lofts, will remain in demand for some time. I suspect that other building and renovation specialities will remain in the hands of humans. Well, yeah, he makes good points, though. And all these AI tools, large language models, these chat bots that are not intelligent, but they don't have any sentience, and they're not aware, awake. They're just text software. Generative text software is what they are, really. And they mimic conversation based on, a database of text. These are gradually going to be embedded into all the tools and the software and the technology that we have, and they'll gradually replace our need to interact with humans. Or they won't replace that need, but they will be there instead of the humans that we would like to interact with. So say you got a complaint or something, you need to ring up a company, you need to address some issue that you're having with their product or service, you're going to end up talking to a ChatGPT, Grok type of artificial intelligence assistant. And it's going to be infuriating. And they'll be programmed that way to wind people up and stress people out and make people go crazy. LJ says, why would you seriously go to a car park and have an injection? Yeah, I mean, there's a certain kind of person who does hang around in car parks injecting themselves, but certainly not a practice that I would advise. Plutonian says, I reckon my job is good for a while. Well, plumbers and plumbing and electricians, electrics, plumbing, carpentry, these kind of work, these kind of jobs, these sort of manual jobs, bricklaying maybe, that kind of stuff, yeah. Rockefellers. Next section is Rockefellers. Quote. Oh, this is, okay. This is a really good quote. And I have the copy of this book, and it's a real quote, but worth reading and getting on the record. Quote, some believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it. And that's in the Rockefeller book, Memoirs. I do have a copy of that over there. I won't get it down. I've showed it on camera before. Next, we got a quote from Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau, when writing about the social contract, claimed that men are basically good, and that it is government and laws that make them bad. If he was right, then it stands to reason that the more government there is and the more laws that are made, then the worse people will become. The EU, which has produced hundreds of thousands of laws, has enraged millions, and I do not doubt that as a result of the many laws which exist, we are now all lawbreakers. yeah, you build out this hideous, monstrous, convoluted bureaucracy, and then it's impossible to follow all the edicts and the rules and the processes, and then you have grounds on which to arrest anybody at any moment and make them disappear, right? So most people who are breaking or some of these rules and laws, they'll never come back to them because they'll be, staying in line, paying their taxes, watching the television, and not questioning things or paying attention or speaking out against what's going on. Fine, you'll be allowed to carry on with your life. But those people who are speaking out, those people who are trying to raise awareness, they'll be hit with all sorts of infractions and violations of various rules. Kind of like when you get a strike on your channel and you've violated the community guidelines, but you're not allowed to see what the guidelines are, and you're not allowed to read and review them or challenge it in a lot of cases. You can do an appeal, but it's usually a robot that's deciding whether or not your appeal is successful. So it's a similar sort of system. Bring in all these laws and conventions and frameworks and agreements, terms and conditions, right? Then everyone's going to be breaking something somewhere, and now you've got ammo to take anybody out at any time should you need to. Should they get a little bit wise? Should they start causing a bit of fuss? Should they start becoming popular or well-known, for example? It's a great tactic. It's very smart. It's just like a spider's web, isn't it? They just build this web of laws, policy and procedure. People have no hope of understanding it all and following it all to the letter. Everyone gets trapped in the web, and then you just pick out the ones that you need to silence and punish harder when they start being troublesome. Next section is royal family. I used to be a royalist. No more. I believe that sensible folk should boo and hiss whenever they see a member of the royal family. They should wave pea shooters or two fingers rather than hands or hankies. The modern royals exhibit greed, self-importance, hubris, and hypocrisy, but absolutely no sense of responsibility, loyalty, or respect towards the people. Right, let me read that bit again. I was faffing with my camera and trying to get the angle good. The modern royals exhibit greed, self-importance, hubris, and hypocrisy, but absolutely no sense of responsibility, loyalty, or respect towards the people who pay for their rock star lifestyles. Britain's royal family has played an enthusiastic part in the plan to make the British people accept Agenda 21. Prince Charles has for many years been a keen advocate of the global warming myth, busily flying around the world to attend global warming conferences. Charles's two sons, William and Harry, have also been keen supporters of the same myth. Queen Elizabeth II, the reigning monarch, was notably absent during the months in which the 2020 hoax started to build towards a climax. The astonishing thing about Charles is the hubris, the certainty that he, a man who has never known any of the normal worries of the world, an intensely overprivileged member of an arrogant, overprivileged family, thinks he understands the global warming cult and knows best how the world should be managed. He, like the rest of his family, has betrayed the British people and the people of the Commonwealth. His son, the Duke of Cambridge, is also blessed with copious quantities of hubris and appears to be a world-class hypocrite. He has stated that there are too many people in the world, but he has 3 children. He flies constantly, but claims that global warming is irrefutable. Just how or why he knows this to be the case, he has not bothered to share with us. As always, with the royal family, it's a case of do as I say, not as I do. If the royals understand that the myth of global warming was devised as an excuse for Agenda 21, then they are traitors. If they don't understand, then they are gullible fools. We should get rid of the existing royal family completely. We can confiscate their estates and provide them with rented accommodation in a high-rise block of flats. But that would leave us with the danger of having a president, and so, to avoid that dire eventuality, we should have rotating royals. This could be arranged via a weekly lottery. Punters entering the lottery could, as one of the prizes, have a chance to win being king and queen for a week. The temporary holders of the royal offices would do the usual hand-waving and opening of cupboards, envelopes, and approved buildings, and then, at the end of their week, go back to their usual lives. The confiscated royal estates could be used to fund this simple operation, so there would be no drain on taxpayers. Candidates for the role should be stupid, vacuous, vain, and have a grotesque sense of entitlement. Almost any successful reality television stars would be suitable for these roles. Well said. That was a really entertaining section. Yeah, it's crazy that we have a royal family. I think they're just for show. I don't think they have really much power or influence. I don't think any of the household names are really the powerful ones. I think the household names are the actors. They're the ones who they're like the characters put out there for us to believe in. We have the king, and we have the president, we have the prime minister, and these are the people making the choices, and these are the people who are in charge, and these are the people that we can criticize. And Alan Watt once said, these are the people, they get trotted out so you can throw tomatoes at them. And I think that's a mistake. I think there's a lot more power behind the scenes and off stage. There's a lot more power being whispered into the ears of these actors. And these actors are just there to provide an illusion. The illusion of a monarchy, the illusion of a democracy, the illusion of a whatever it might be, communist, socialist state, whatever you're in, whatever system you're in. There's actually a very small group of people controlling it, running it, and planning it. You'll never know their names and who they are, but they have to trot out some class of people and tell you that these are the people who are in charge, right? LJ says, I love his sense of humor. Yeah, me too. I really do. He's got a great way of words, a great turn of phrase. Emeroid says, the coronation oath is a promise to the people to do things in our best interests, breaking it every day. Yeah, well, the police have an oath as well, don't they? That they just ignore every single day. They have to take an oath at the beginning when they sign up. Yeah, what's an oath? What's it good for, really? And when you can't hold people to account, hey, you made this oath and you broke it, and now we're going to, force you to step down or make amends. You can't do that. So what good is an oath, really? Just sounds they're making with their mouth, really. All right, Rupert Bear. Here's a quote from Rupert Bear. Trolls never do any good to anybody. Wise words from the great and inimitable Rupert the Bear. All right, the next bit is rural living. Agenda 21 has no room for people living in the countryside. They will force people out of the country and into their smart cities by banning cars and public transport, cutting electricity and telephone supplies to rural areas. In the UK, despite many promises, there are still huge areas of countryside without any cell phone coverage and many other areas with intermittent or pretty useless coverage. Broadband coverage in rural areas is often miserable and likely to remain so. Other measures will be to stop doing road repairs in rural areas and to leave communities without fresh water supplies for long periods. Requests to take water from springs and boreholes are being denied, and house owners asking for permission to build septic tanks will find many difficulties put in their way. The end result will be to force down rural property prices and to force those living in the country to move into one of the new tower blocks in a designated city. In the suburbs, there will be taxes on gardens too. The UK government has announced that 30% of the UK is to become wild. It would be impossible to do this without confiscating much farmland, many areas of outstanding natural beauty, and a great many private gardens. Surprisingly, perhaps, residential gardens take up 4.8% of UK's land, whereas industrial and commercial land takes up only 0.4% of the available land. Safety. The instinctive human need for safety and security has been enhanced by constant threats and scares. We have been encouraged to accept any law which we believe will make us safer and help us avoid any risk. The fear tactics have created a global population of hypochondriacs. I'm just going to tab that page on the royal family. Yeah, the security thing, right? The safety thing. If you know that you can get more laws and legislation and passed, if you can collect more taxes, if you can justify more control, and your goal is to gain control, then you're going to come up with boogeymen and scary terrorists and scary things that float around and are invisible and make you cough and kill grandma, right? You're going to come up with all these scary, terrible things that could happen and then say, in order for us to save you, we need some emergency powers, we need new laws, we need new rules in place, and you have to trust us because we care so much about you. Let us look after you, right? Just give us these extra powers. They're only temporary. We'll give them back, at the end of the emergency. But for dealing with this emergency, we really need these temporary powers. And of course, the powers are not temporary. They're permanent. They never get rolled back, right? We saw this with 9/11 in America, the Patriot Act. We saw it in the UK as well during the Big C event. These things remain on the books, ready to be used at the next event, planned event. All right, we've got a section here on scanners. AI scanners are being used to supply data to the authorities. The scanners identify individuals who do not keep sufficient distance between themselves and others, and when used with facial recognition cameras, enable the authorities to arrest those whose reckless selfishness is alleged to be endangering mankind. I saw footage, I don't know if it was true or real, but I saw footage of Amazon warehouses using this kind of technology. And there was a screen and the people... the camera was pointing at the people, and on the screen the display showed a circle around the human standing there, and if another person got too close within that circle, alarm would go off and it would beep, right? And so it was like enforcing the arbitrary, I should say, social distancing rule that came up, which was different in different countries, different distances. All right, this next section on schools. Since February 2020, I have pretty well lost touch with what is possible in this upside-down world. I do not, for example, understand why so many apparently sane and fairly sensible people should be so overwhelmed by manufactured fear and manipulated misinformation that they have lost touch with reality. Why do so many people feel safe only if they are told exactly what to do for every minute of the day? When did so many people lose their humanity and their good sense? Yeah, that's a great quote. I thought he was going to say, why do so many people only feel safe when the television tells them they're safe? Because television is really the god now. Television is the priest. It's the oracle. It's the arbiter of what to believe and think and feel at any given time, right? And so if your television is telling you to be scared and fearful and worried and anxious, people will receive that message and, they will behave and act and feel accordingly. The opposite is true, right? And it's totally known how television affects people and what it does to people's minds and their well-being and their nervous system and their comprehension of reality. Well known. And yet it's used largely to push either trivial entertainment, or fear and doubt and uncertainty and storylines and events that you can do nothing about, but nevertheless make you feel extremely uncomfortable and insecure. It's all by design, it's all on purpose. So the best remedy for that is to just throw your television out, set fire to it, although you'll probably get fined if you did set fire to it. So maybe just donate it to a British Heart Foundation instead. But yeah, smash it up. That's my advice. Take it out on the street and jump up and down on it. It'd probably be quite a cathartic experience. You'll feel better after doing that. But it is amazing how much people's well-being depends on what their television tells them. Okay, continuing, he says, for example, I know of absolutely no medical reason for primary school children to wear face coverings or to be forced to keep apart from one another. If I had a child at a school where the authorities were planning to force CIA torture techniques on children, I would want to ask a lawyer to warn the teachers that I would hold them legally responsible for any physical or mental harm caused by their woeful ignorance. I would point out that children in China have already died as a result of obeying the new rules. All teachers who support these absurd and entirely unnecessary nonsenses are guilty of child abuse. Oh, Yeah, I mean, this whole bit is fantastic. It's no good them saying they were obeying the government or their union. It was no good for the Nazis at Nuremberg, and it's no good for teachers today. Nor is ignorance any excuse. Any teacher who thinks that children are seriously at risk from the over-marketed virus is too stupid to be teaching finger painting, let alone anything more sophisticated. Why is this happening? The only explanation I can think of is that the plan is to close all schools and force all professional teaching online. Exams will be set, taken, and marked online. Anyone who doesn't bother to attend classes will simply stay ignorant. The aim of education will be to enable pupils to pass examinations and to learn how to perform simple work tasks. The Agenda 21 plan is to get rid of teaching as a profession, and teachers seem surprisingly keen to collaborate in their own destruction. Young people who are planning a career in teaching should think again and look for some other way to earn a living. Yeah, I did teach for a while, but not in England. I was teaching English to foreign speakers of English. And people said to me when I came back to England, like, oh, you're going to be a teacher in England? I'm like, nope, absolutely not. Because I know the true purpose of the system, and it's not to educate, it's not to teach young minds to harness their creativity and their curiosity to do good things in the world. It's to hammer out of them any sense of individuality and to make them conform with a 9-to-5, sit down, do what the authority at the front of the room tells you to do, and ask permission to go to the toilet and eat food when we tell you to eat food. That's the purpose of it. Don't ask questions. Put your hand up. Ask permission to speak. And learn massive amounts of unrelated trivia and regurgitate that in when we tell you to. Right? It's not education. It's indoctrination. And it's standardization, and it is harmful. You know, it actually harms children to do this to them, and they end up being drones. They end up being unimaginative, order-following, fearful cowards who obey television, which is the whole point of education. Okay, we got a section on Klaus Schwab, everyone's favorite supervillain. Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, and whom some regard as a dead ringer for Dr. Strangelove, has a knighthood. I would now believe anyone who told me that Queen Elizabeth travels everywhere by broomstick. She betrayed her people by not speaking out about the European Union, and her family has furthered that betrayal by supporting the Great Reset and the intended slavery of the British people. Schwab wrote a book called Shaping the Future of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and subtitled A Guide to Building a Better World. It should have been called Nightmare on Your Street. It seemed to me to be at the same time impenetrable, arrogant, ignorant, and badly written. I found it well supplied with split infinitives, and yet the scariest book I've ever read. I was so horrified by the contents that I had to keep struggling on. Here are a few quotes to give a flavor of the book. From a section headed Altering the Human Being. The lines between technologies and beings are becoming blurred, and not just by the ability to create lifelike robots or synthetics. Instead, it is about the ability of new technologies to literally become part of us. Technologies already influence how we understand ourselves, how we think about each other, and how we determine our realities. As the technologies give us deeper access to parts of ourselves, we may begin to integrate digital technologies into our bodies. Ugh. And another quote from a section about agriculture, quote, to feed the world in the next 50 years, we will need to produce as much food as was produced in the last 10,000 years. Quote. And then Vernon Coleman's comment is, so what? The population is bigger and we have better farming techniques. Going back to the quote from the book, food security will only be achieved, however, if regulations on genetically modified foods are adapted to reflect the reality that gene editing offers a precise, efficient, and safe method of improving crops. And of course, we all know that to be bullshit. But let's find out, shall we, if Vernon Coleman is... what's that fancy word for lying? He's just making things up. Let's see. Because I actually have a copy of Klaus Schwab's book here. And I corrected it, right? It's kind of hard to see on the front here. But I changed I said, you know, because you listen to him speak, you'll know why. But this book is called Shaping the Future of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And that's actually how it should be titled. But let's check. So you should have a section in here about, what was it? There it is. So section 2.3 of the book, indeed, is called Altering the Human Being. And that includes biotechnologies, neurotechnologies, virtual and augmented realities, and some stuff about arts, culture, and the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So I wonder if we can find the quote that Vernon Coleman was just highlighting. It's going to be tricky because we'll have to scan very quick. But what is it? The lines between technologies and beings are becoming blurred. Okay. Doesn't seem to be here. Oh, interesting that he talks about Promethean power, right? Prometheus. You want to look up James Tunney and his talk on Prometheus and how important the figure and the legend and the mythology of Prometheus is to the to world controllers. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find this quote. It's kind of hard to scan for a sentence. Oh, but new paradigm shifts in treatments. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to find it, I don't think. But anyway, that book does exist, and I have no reason to doubt that Vernon Coleman's quotation is accurate. But that's a nice section on Klaus Schwab. Penetrating the cabinets. Oh, we got Lil Ronnie Cooper here. Greetings. I am melting. Yeah, I'm like wiping sweat off my forehead as I'm sitting here reading this. But, you know, it could be something to do with the fact that I'm drinking hot tea as well. Why are you drinking hot tea? It's because I'm English. What else would I be drinking? Cold beer? No, not me. I don't care what temperature it is outside. I'm going to have a cup of tea, and I'm going to sweat and suffer through it and enjoy every second of it. Delicious. Kelly Nora says they want all children on Google laptops. That's why they closed the schools, to track from day one, in my opinion. Oh, that's a good point, yeah. Yeah, because everyone was forced to do online learning, which means everyone was on Zoom calls, which means constant surveillance of your face, your eye movements, whether or not you're yawning, whether or not you're picking your nose, whether you're looking down on your phone and ignoring the lesson. It's constant track trace database of everything, right, at all times, which is the whole point, because they want to track it all. Then they can feed all that data into their systems of nudging, psychological controlling and manipulation, and make everybody perfectly predictable, because that's how you gain control and you maintain control, is you keep everybody predictable, and you do that by monitoring absolutely everything all the time. It's the panopticon society. The panopticon is a structured prison with a cell box on the outside of a circular room going all the way up, and then a tower in the middle, and the prisoners inside the cells have no idea if they're being watched at any given moment, and therefore they just assume that they're being watched all the time, and they behave better, right? That's what it is. So it's the same sort of thing, pushing us all to these online ways of working. The next thing is going to be, there's a productivity crisis and people are getting distracted and they're not working as hard, so we're going to have to roll out some sort of monitoring of their brain waves, of their consciousness, their alertness, their eye movements, to make sure that they're staying on task. And it reminds me of there's a Black Mirror episode. It's in the first series. It's called something like 50,000 million credits or something like that. It's a really good episode. I mean, it's terrifying and it's horrific and it's, stressful and dark, but it's good. But he lives in this room, and he's in this center of some description. It's never really described how he got in there or why he's in there, but he lives in this sort of, it's like in a building, and his bedroom is wall-to-wall LCD screens, no windows. And then in the morning, when it's time to wake up, all the walls on all the screens on all the walls light up. And the first thing that happens after he's woken up is all these ads start playing. And, you know, he puts his hand to his face like this and he covers his eyes and the ads pause. And then a warning comes up and it says, watch the ad or you cannot continue, you know. And it makes this alarm, this grating alarm sound until he opens his eyes again. And then the ad keeps playing. So he's forced to watch these ads every single day at the start of every single day. That's the kind of thing, you know, that always stuck in my mind, that he covered his eyes and it paused it and it wouldn't continue and it shouted an alert and a warning at him until he opened his eyes to watch it again. It's that kind of thing. Put everyone online, get them on laptops. You've all got cameras pointed at your face all the time. You gather all that intel and that information and then, you know, you feed it back into the control system. Simple. Oh, there's another, so we're actually still on the Klaus Schwab section here. Vernon Coleman says, where did that nonsense come from? Who says gene editing is precise, efficient, and safe? Well, it's safe and effective. Everyone knows that. And then there's a section on neurotechnologies from Klaus Schwab's book. Quote, neurotechnologies enable us to better influence consciousness and thought and to understand many activities of the brain. They include decoding what we are thinking in fine levels of detail through new chemicals and interventions that can influence our brains to correct for errors or enhance functionality. Correct for errors. There you go. Who decides what the errors are? Lil Ronnie Cooper says, Series 7 of Black Mirror is worth watching. Yeah, I did end up watching that. I said I wasn't going to watch it. I ended up watching it. And my favorite episode was the Thronglets episode. It's called Plaything. That was the standout one to me by far because of the use of the... Well, I won't give any spoilers away, but if you're only going to watch one, I would go for that one. I've been very interested in this idea of hive mind recently, and it kind of touches on that. And it's kind of got a nice retro vibe to it as well. All right. Scott, Walter Scott, is a quote here. Breathe there the man with soul so dead, who never to himself hath said, this is my own, my native land. Scottish National Party. The SNP closely follows all Agenda 21 principles. For example, the SNP plans to criminalize inflammatory publications such as the Bible, inflammatory publications, and most, if not all, newspapers. Oh, I didn't know that. That's crazy. I'm not surprised. And then they'll force everyone to read the Quran, probably. Self-programming computers. All right. Billionaire and general bad egg Elon Musk is reported to have claimed that human beings must merge with artificial intelligence systems if they are to compete with self-programming computers. There is, of course, an alternative. Simply slow down the development of computers and insist that they are used as tools and no more. But that doesn't seem very likely. Meanwhile, there is hope. Would a computer write this book? No, of course not. That's great. I like that section. Speaking of computer programs, I've been using ChatGPT recently, and in a very limited way to help me sort of flesh out a business model for Haze Reviews and trying to figure out a way to turn it into a revenue stream. And I came up with a tagline that I wanted to use in my marketing that ChatGPT couldn't improve. And the only thing it could improve was like putting one of those M dashes in there that it likes to use all over the place. So I was pretty happy with that. So yeah, they're pretty limited. They're not as all singing, all dancing as people would have you believe. Not at least ChatGPT. I can't speak for the others. I haven't used any of them. But ChatGPT is kind of clunky. It makes things up all the time. It ignores instructions. You have to repeat yourself. You have to be very clear, very precise. It has its uses and its use cases, but I wouldn't rely on it for anything too complicated, or I wouldn't rely on it to tell you the truth, ever, for anything at all. LJ says, the creation of monsters, is that what Klaus means? The creation of monsters. Do you mean the name Klaus? I'm not sure what you mean by that question, RJ. All right. Self-publishing. Since truth became a dangerous commodity, it has become necessary for many authors to publish their own work. Traditional publishers will not risk upsetting the establishment by publishing any author who tries to share inconvenient truths. The close down on the truth has been incredibly well planned and efficiently managed. Naturally, the shills and thugs and trolls use the term self-publishing as a term of abuse, implying that because an author only self-publishes because his or her work is unworthy of publication, rather than because self-publishing is the only way around the censorship which now abounds. So, when the Wikipedia page, which carries my name, was taken over by mindless morons in the service of the fascist state, I suddenly became described as a self-publisher and a blogger. For the record, I have no idea what a blogger is, although I have written articles for my website since long before Wikipedia was born. Sadly, even self-publishing has become increasingly difficult. One major platform which has published over 100 of my books, most of which had previously been published by mainstream publishers, now refuses to publish books by me which deal with the infection. Oddly, however, that same platform will publish books on these subjects by other authors. Indeed, one thief stole the transcripts of my videos from my website and published them under his own name. He put my picture on the cover of the book, but takes all the royalties himself. The platform allowed this. Emma Royd says, have to go, allotment watering, love to all. Thanks for hanging out, Emma, and have a lovely time on your allotment. And yeah, definitely keep those plants watered in this heat. So continuing. For the record, my books have been published by dozens of mainstream publishers in the UK and by mainstream publishers in 50 countries in 25 languages, with many bestsellers around the world. But as far as Wikipedia is concerned, I'm a self-publishing blogger. The ignorant editors at Wikipedia are clearly unaware that many of the world's most renowned and successful authors have, from time to time, published their own books. We've got a section next on sewage. A new national smart sewer network is being put in place in the USA to predictively analyze American sewage. They say this will enable them to spot virus outbreaks. But what else are they going to be measuring? And why? Okay, we got William Shakespeare quote now. If this were portrayed upon a stage now, I could condemn it as improbable fiction. Hell is empty. The demons are everywhere apparent. I agree wholeheartedly with that last quote. There's a lot of demons among the living. Or inside some of us. Some of them. Some of those claiming to be humans, I think, are actually, Frank, what's your term? Demons in skin suits? It's a really good term. A lot of demons in skin suits out there. Now we got George Bernard Shaw. Quote, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. Okay, so be unreasonable. And that is how you will be. Well, it depends what you mean by progress, though, right? I guess we could read that like the progress of, Schwab's plans, for example, depends on the average Joe and Jane being unreasonable, not applying their rationality, not thinking critically, not questioning, not looking for logic, not ironing out inconsistencies and contradictions, and being unreasonable. And therefore, the plans can go on unchallenged and unhindered. Oh, LJ says, his plan for us to turn us all into mindless zombies with no thoughts of our own. I think there is something to that. It's drugs and computer games for us, isn't it? Drugs and computer games and just living inside the metaverse. And just rejecting reality, not having any skin in the game, not caring about what goes on because, hey, I got my little computer game avatar. I can go into my Minecraft house and farm my sheep and, just escape into the virtual world. And that has been happening since the advent of personal computing, really. Lil Ronnie Cooper says, Common People was my favorite Black Mirror. Yeah, I couldn't enjoy that. That one was too dark, dismal, and depressing for me. It really was. So it was a well-made bit of TV, but it was so incredibly bleak that I couldn't say I enjoyed it. Okay, next section is smacking. The smacking of children has been made illegal in Scotland. This is just one small step towards the state taking over the ownership of all children, much as was forecast by Aldous Huxley. Scotland is the 58th country in the world to ban smacking in the home, also giving children the same rights as adults. It is traditionally considered the responsibility of parents to teach their children old-fashioned things like respect and good behaviour, but the Scottish Government has, at a stroke, removed the parents from the equation and appointed itself the guardian of every child. The Scottish Government has The Scottish Government has, as far as this is concerned, since a couple of years ago, they tried to impose the idea of guardianship on all children. Okay. That was a bit, I think there might be a word or two missing there, but continuing. Taking responsibility from parents and giving it to the state is one of the many tenets of Agenda 21. Yeah, the state is your daddy now and your mummy. The majority of doctors and psychologists and behavioral specialists believe that modest and controlled physical punishment is an essential part of child upbringing and far preferable to the far more damaging psychological punishment which involves withdrawing affection from a child for sometimes long periods of time. Dr. Benjamin Spock, probably the most famous pediatrician of all time, and certainly the most influential, began his career by opposing physical punishment, but changed his mind and his advice in later life and agreed that modest and controlled physical punishment, a smack on the hand for example, was far preferable to the alternatives. Small businesses. The Agenda 21 plan is to see small businesses destroyed by the introduction of many new laws. The laws will be easily dealt with by large companies which can hire specialist departments to deal with additional complications. In the world of Agenda 21, everything will require a license and permit, and obtaining these licenses and permits will be difficult and expensive. Doubters should remember that the EU did everything it could to kill off small businesses. Yeah, I think he's absolutely right there. It goes back to what we were saying about that impenetrable web of bureaucracy that's going to ensnare you and trap you and trip you up no matter what you do, because it's designed to be that way. Next section is smart. The word smart, as applied to meters, cities, and so on, is often applied to anything which removes your rights and privacy and gives those rights to the Agenda 21 cultists. Smart cities. I think this is quite a long section, if I remember rightly. Oh no, it's not too bad. Social credit, that's the longest section we got coming up. Okay, smart cities. Part of the Agenda 21 plan is to move all citizens into huge or mega cities. China has already started doing this. People are forced from rural and suburban areas into high-rise flats. This is all rather reminiscent of the highland clearances. Citizens from rural communities will be forced into the smart cities by a complex combination of positive and negative incentives. There will be grants, tax credits, and housing benefits to persuade people to move into cities. And in the countryside, rural properties will be condemned, seized, and demolished. The building of new roads and railway lines and sewage treatment facilities to serve the new cities will be used as an excuse for confiscation and demolition. Rewilding plans will also be used to force people out of the countryside, as will huge dams. In China, the Yangtze Dam displaced millions of people from rural areas to smart cities. In addition, there will be very few or no rural services, with fire brigade, ambulance services, and postal services all being ended in rural areas. Poor broadband will make it increasingly difficult for people to live in rural areas, as more and more of our lives become dependent upon the internet. Rural roads will be left unmended, and bus and train services to rural areas will be cut even further. Farms will no longer be needed, as naturally grown food is replaced with artificial food made in factories. Bill Gates' plan to block out the sun will damage farming. In the UK, the plans are already well in hand to create these smart cities. Under cover of 2020's manufactured crisis, the government introduced new planning legislation. Development in England will in future be concentrated on brownfield sites in 20 selected cities in the Midlands and the North. Building will only be allowed in places such as Birmingham, Bradford, Leeds and Stoke. These are to be the new smart cities. Once land has been declared unprotected, it will enjoy a presumption in favour of planning permission. This marks the end of local democracy. In January 2021, it was reported that 7 of the largest cities in the UK were experiencing a property boom. Those commentators who have noticed this dramatic change in the way England is organised have been rather indignant, but as far as I know, none of them has noticed that this is connected to the Agenda 21 plan for smart cities. Indeed, these are largely the same commentators who regard those of us worried about Agenda 21 as conspiracy theorists and then dismiss us as discredited lunatics. The Agenda 21 supporters claim that the smart cities will give us a healthier way of life. We will be able to walk or cycle everywhere we need to go. We will not need to travel because there will be nowhere to go outside our city, and since all cities will be the same, what would be the point in going to another city? Pollution will drop because no one except the bureaucrats who will need to travel about to make sure we're all being obedient will have a car. Apartments in the high-rise towers will be cheap to rent because they will be small and poorly built. There will be little need for energy for heating. No one will have a garden, so there won't be any need to waste water growing grass, flowers or vegetables. The weather will be controlled, so there will never be any snow or ice. It will rain at night. There will be no police and no crime because everyone will be watching everyone else to make sure that they behave, and drones and robots will be watching us all to make sure we report any law breaking we observe. So it's a grim future, really. It really is. Smart meters. Homes are being fitted with smart meters, which are allegedly being introduced to help consumers save money. However, although a smart meter is extremely unlikely to save more than a few pennies, it might kill you. The risks to human health are so real that in France, a court ordered the removal of some smart meters because people had been made ill by them. Moreover, it now seems that a new sort of smart meter will have to be installed in the near future, so existing smart meters will have to be removed and presumably dumped. In the UK, the government is reviewing plans to give electricity companies the power to cut off electricity supplies without warning or compensation. A particular target will be users of large amounts of electricity in homes. Electric vehicle charging points and central heating systems are particularly likely to be targeted. Smart meters will make it easy for electricity companies to cut off electricity supplies to individual homes. Dissidents will find that their electricity supplies disappear. Sneaks and snitches. For several decades now, people have been trained to abandon basic human behavior and to sneak and snitch on their neighbors. And this is made all the more easier by multicultural, communities and societies, right? People who don't look like you or behave like you are much easier to snitch on. That's just the fact, unfortunately. They have been encouraged with cash payments for their treachery. Today, in addition to encouraging people to report neighbors or family members who break laws in any way, the police have published advertisements inviting people to report family, friends, neighbors, and workmates who they suspect of having been radicalized into expressing opinions at variance with those of their government. It is clear now that this was all preparation for the future social credit. These days, snitching and sneaking is organized and professional among companies everywhere. If you buy a new television set, the retailer will tell the TV licensing Gestapo what you've done. If you buy a few chickens so that you can let them run around in your garden and lay fresh, free-range eggs, the person who provided you with the chickens will be encouraged to tell the authorities, and someone from the chicken licensing Gestapo will come to your home, and if it is for some reason considered inappropriate for you to keep chickens, kill the birds you have bought. Yeah. I mean, he's absolutely on the money with these descriptions. He really is. Oh, we got a Smile a Day full on here as well. Welcome to you. Good to see you. Thanks for joining in. All right, so this next section is social credit. Let's see. We'll finish S, and then we'll call it a night. Before I start this one, though, I'm just gonna have a quick swig. He's got a lot to say about social credit. All right. A few years ago, in a book of mine called The Games Afoot, I wrote that the Chinese government was giving people marks according to their behavior. The social engineering, citizens being ranked and rated according to their behavior, began in earnest just over a decade ago. The government, I wrote in some amazement, will measure people's behavior in order to decide what services they are entitled to. Anyone who incurs black marks for traffic offences, fare dodging or jaywalking will find that they are no longer entitled to the full range of public services and rights. Moreover, internet activity will also be used to assess behaviour. Individuals who do bad things on the internet or whose searches are considered questionable will find themselves black marked. Researchers from the International Monetary Fund have called for internet search history to be tied to credit scores. Individuals who have responsible jobs will be subjected to enhanced scrutiny. It was called a social credit score, and I wrote then that it was likely that Western governments would soon follow suit. And they are now doing so with great enthusiasm. It might not have obviously reached your town just yet, but it will. China has led the way because the Chinese system is more efficient than anything the West can offer. The Chinese government has control over everything, and the people don't have much control over anything. It works very easily. Everyone starts off with so many points. And a smart app on every phone measures behavior and helps the authorities decide whether or not you're a good citizen. There are, of course, video cameras everywhere, watching to see whether you cross the road at the wrong time, smoke in public, throw down litter, or do anything considered antisocial or inappropriate. If you talk to the wrong sort of people, you'll find your credit rating goes down. Stand and talk to me, for example, and you'll get black marks. China has one camera for every 2 people, and they're equipped with facial recognition technology that can pick an individual out of a football crowd in less time than it takes to say, surely they can't do that. They can do that, and don't call me Shirley. Sorry, I just had to get that in there. Supermarket computers watch to see how much you spend on alcohol, cigarettes, sweets, and fatty foods. You'll lose points if you spend too much on the wrong sort of food. Local authorities measure how much recycling you put out, and cameras in the bins will tell computers how much food you've thrown away and how much excess packaging you've had to discard. Eating meat or consuming unacceptable foodstuffs will result in a severe loss of points, as will putting too much refuse into public bins. Facial recognition cameras in bins will see and punish you and reduce your food credit. In a way, social credit scores were already here in the West, though up until now they have been introduced slowly and surreptitiously. In the UK, for example, drivers of more expensive motor cars have to pay a special, massively increased tax to use a motor car on the roads. That's a blatant punishment for spending too much on a motor car. On the other hand, citizens who drive electric cars do not have to pay anything towards the building, maintenance, and repair of roads. They are exempt from the tax because they are good citizens. Their cars use the roads just as much as cars which are powered with petrol or diesel, but they are exempt. And isn't it right as well that the electric cars have such a weight to them because of the massive batteries that they damage the streets more than the petrol and diesel cars? So the electric cars do more damage to the roads, but the drivers are exempt from paying the taxes which supposedly go to repairing the roads, but they don't do much road repairing. In my hometown, at least, every time I go back there, the roads seem to have gotten worse by orders of magnitude. Drivers of petrol or diesel-powered cars are punished for being bad citizens and must pay ever-rising annual taxes to pay for the roads. The system ignores the fact that electric cars have been proven to be no better for the environment than petrol or diesel-powered cars, and drive your car into a city and you'll have to pay a special penalty. So what can we expect? If you live in a house that is bigger than you... If you live in a house that is bigger than you need, then you will be marked down as socially undesirable and your taxes will rise. If you have spare rooms, you'll be punished. If you do a useful job and give money to charity, you'll get extra points. If you criticize the government, you'll lose points. When you're away from home, the authorities will, of course, know where you are all the time. Indeed, if you behave badly, you won't be allowed to go far from home. If you haven't obeyed all the health regulations, you won't be allowed to travel on public transport, fly anywhere, or go abroad. If your social credit rating goes down, you won't be able to borrow money, buy a house, or book a decent room in a hotel. If your rating goes down too far, you won't be allowed to go into hospital. And if you get taken to hospital by accident, they'll slam a do not resuscitate notice around your neck before you can say, what's that for? You'll receive bonus points if you live in a tiny, modern, poorly built flat with thin walls and no privacy, but you'll lose those points if you keep a pet or complain about anything. If you spend too much on clothes or shoes, your rating will go down, and saving money will mark you out as guilty of something or other, and you won't be able to hire a car, get a promotion at work, use a gym, or get your children into a school with textbooks. If you're a lot of trouble, you'll find that your internet speeds will slow to a crawl, and if you have your own business and talk back to council officials, you won't get any help with planning problems or be able to obtain any official government contracts. If you don't dress appropriately when out in public or are spotted crossing the road when the lights are against you, then you'll be photographed and your picture displayed. If you have a row with a neighbor, then your pictures will be put on a billboard near your home and you'll be shamed. If you are late with your taxes, you'll be marked down for regular audits. Your business will be inspected once a week and your picture will appear on a shame board on the internet. You'll find it impossible to obtain licenses, permits, and loans you might need. In restaurants, the cameras will study your manners and eating habits and the amount of food you leave on the plate. All of these things are likely to result in damage to your social credit rating. Snitches, sneaks, police officers, and over-compliant government employees will mark you down for any sin of commission or omission. And by now you probably think I'm making this up, and I wish I were, but I'm not. We're not talking about the far distant future. We're talking about the very near future. Indeed, much of this is already happening in China. You'll receive points if you give blood, lose points if you associate with people with low scores, be punished if you spend frivolously or criticize the government on social media. Not having the correct number of children, being overweight, and owning land will result in a loss of social credit points. Note that in the UK, the Office for National Statistics has already claimed that childless women will be a burden on the state because they'll have no one to look after them. Not having a smart meter in your home will result in a loss of points, as will any example of civil disobedience. Chronic sickness, mental illness, being old and being disabled will lose you points as well as will being arrested. It doesn't matter whether you're found guilty. Having too big a carbon footprint, being middle class or white, or asking too many questions will all result in a loss of points, as will being too protective of your family. You'll lose social credit points if you cause someone identity harm. Say something that makes someone feel uncomfortable about who they are, where they're from, or what they look like, or don't say something that causes them to feel good. If you show any microaggression, are accused of exhibiting white privilege, or alleged to have stirred up hatred, you'll be punished. If you are reported to have behaved in a threatening or abusing or insulting manner, you will be in trouble, as you will if you communicate threatening, abusive, or insulting material to another person. Your intention will be irrelevant. There is no need for a guilty verdict. The complainant only has to say he was hurt. Writers, actors, or film or stage directors could be charged if anyone finds any of their material offensive. Shakespearean plays won't appear much in the future. You probably think I'm really kidding now, but I'm not. In the UK, the police now define a crime or incident as hateful based on the perception of the victim and not on the intent of the offender. Naturally, the police and politicians have been encouraging citizens to snitch on those breaking laws. You can get into serious trouble for playing loud music or having trees in your garden. Strangely, trees are regarded as bad despite their value in getting rid of carbon dioxide because they may interfere with communications. There will be no place for aesthetics or nature in the New World Order. What else will be bad? Eating on public transport, missing a medical appointment, parking in the wrong place, missing a job interview, and jaywalking will all lose you points and make your life more difficult. If you think I've gone mad, you should know that cybersecurity experts have discovered that 32% of adults between 25 and 34 in 21 countries have already had difficulty getting a mortgage or a loan because of their social media activity. And so far, around 4.5 billion people around the world use the internet, and most have social media accounts. Moreover, a fairly scary survey found that 2/3 of individuals are willing to share information about themselves or others to get a shopping discount, while half are willing to do so if it helps them skip queues at airports. 1 in 2 individuals says they are happy for the government to monitor everyone's social media behavior if it means keeping the public safe. Of course, It will be impossible to find out what your social credit score is, to find out exactly how scores are made up, or to correct any error. And scores will be changed in real time. So you could join a queue thinking you're entitled to hire a car or board a train, and find when you get to the front of the queue that your rating has changed and you can't do either of those things. And that's exactly what happened in the Black Mirror episode Nosedive. And that's worth watching as well. It's a season 2, I think, or 3. It's quite an early. I think it's in one of the early series. But that's exactly this. Governments, big companies, and local authorities are already gathering information about you from facial recognition cameras, biometric studies at airports, drones, surveillance planes, and social media. This is the technocratic state in full fly. Using a silly name on social media will provide you with absolutely no protection. They know exactly who Stinky Feet really is, and they know the name, address, and inside leg measurement of Bumfluff. You can forget about privacy, freedom, or rights. We will soon all be living in China. If one person in a family breaks the law, the whole family will be punished. Taking an active part in a religious ceremony will result in punishment. You may, for example, be sent to an education and training center where the inmates study political propaganda. Every time you give information online, they are storing up information about you, your views, your personality, and so on. And there are so many ways in which your social credit score can be adversely affected. If you drop rubbish in a public place, you will be shamed and will lose points. In Thailand, tourists who drop rubbish in a national park must give their name and address. If they leave rubbish behind, they're in trouble. All this is known as social engineering. It's something politicians have been trying to do for many years since. When it works, which it does, it gives them complete control over the population. There is no longer any need for politicians to worry about opposition or criticism. In China, citizens who do good things for the state and their community are rewarded by having their photographs and names on a local wall. This is exactly what I remember seeing in East Germany in the 1970s. And back then, people vied with one another to please the state and win a place on the wall. So again, if you want to know the sort of society you and your children will live in, then look at China now and East Germany 50 years ago, where what people do, say, and think is being monitored. But our future won't be so free and easy as life in China is at the moment. We're moving rapidly into a dystopian digital dictatorship. Good behavior will be rewarded and bad behavior punished. But who defines what is good and what is bad? Geo-tracking is the new normal now. Your financial records are combined with your criminal record, academic record, medical record, and shopping patterns. They're keeping an eye on the type of friends you have, the videos you watch, the people you date or marry or meet. This is Big Brother on speed. In the brave new world, those with a low credit score won't be able to move an inch. People who speak out about corruption or who question the propaganda will be punished. If they are fined, then their fine will be higher because they are seen as bad people. And it's already all happening. Computer games are training us for our future. I'm banned in China because I wrote a column for a Chinese newspaper which was considered unacceptable. My books in Chinese were instantly removed from sale. I'll leave you with this fact. There are public loos in China which won't let you in without first checking your face and identifying you. Only then will the machine dispense the small quantity of loo paper that you are allowed. How many sheets will you be allowed if you have a low credit score? 2? 1? None at all? You may be smiling now, but see if you're smiling in 12 months' time. Meanwhile, governments everywhere are using fear and ridicule and brainwashing and indoctrination techniques to force you to accept social engineering. Well, that was quite a section. That whole section on social credit was kind of the finishing blow, I think. Okay, so we've got about 2.5 pages left. 3.5 pages left now. I'm just going to have a swig before we finish these 3. Let's see what I got. Kelly Nora says, some towns in Tennessee have a shame paper that puts out weekly arrests with mugshots, free of charge. No way. Yeah, so they'll shame you publicly. Well, Imagine that, but sent out to everybody's smartphones all at once. Or you can imagine even a sort of augmented reality type situation whereby people are all wearing these like Google glasses type things. You know, I saw an advertisement somewhere. It was Chris Hemsworth who plays Thor, and it was the other guy, one of the other superhero actors. And they were wearing these glasses and they were using them to look at things, and there was a sort of overlay over the things they were looking at, and they were being given information about whatever it was, businesses or logos or products. I can't remember exactly. But you can imagine it being like that. So people all have glasses or contact lenses or something, and when they look at you, they'll see your score, right? Your social credit score will kind of be hovering next to your head or something. And then you'll have that choice at that moment of like, do I interact with this person, or do I just swerve them or sidestep them or ignore them or go past them or whatever it might be. I can imagine it getting to that point. And the people who wear that kind of thing for that information, they'll be the ones who are the snitches that he already talked about earlier, right? The spies and the snitches, the do-gooders, the lefties. Okay, we'll finish these 3.5 pages and then I will get back to being a dad. So, we got special branch. Under the Covert Human Intelligence Sources Bill in the UK, any intelligence service will be legally able to commit whatever crimes they fancy. They will be allowed to murder British citizens without fear of there being any reprisals or consequences. Who can they kill? David Kelly? Oh no, they killed him already. Princess Diana? They can kill you if you don't behave yourself. They can kill me if I write a book or article or make a video criticizing the government, as if I would do such a thing. Incidentally, I could find no mention of this bill on the BBC website, though it is probably the most important piece of legislation since the Magna Carta was signed. Okay, that sounds like something we should fact check. Covert Human Intelligence Sources Criminal Conduct Bill. Can anybody dig that up? Any budding researchers with fast fingers watching the broadcast? I'm going to put a little sticky note in there. I'm going to have to look it up later. We're making good progress in the book now. We might finish it on the next video. Yeah. All right. Spies in the home. Some new television sets can film and record what the TV's viewers are saying and doing. The films and recording continue even when the TV switched off and can be sent off to the authorities. It's been reported that Alexa, the also useful and ubiquitous voice, can record questions, comments, and conversations. I believe this to be true. Worse still, it was revealed in early 2021 that children are to be used as spies against their parents by state agencies. The Covert Human Intelligence Sources Bill will allow teenagers to spy on their parents, and it will authorize them to commit crimes. All right, so that's another one we're going to look at. Oh, no, it's the same one as above. The child agents will be able to glean information that could be used to protect public health or national security, or to help collect taxes, of course. Older children, 16 and 17, could be recruited to spy on their parents if they were suspected of being involved in crime or terrorism. So this ties in with what he was saying about the SNP wanting to be the guardians of the children, right? So, and again, it's like the Hitler Youth, and the same thing happened under the Soviet system as well. North Korea, right? Getting children to spy on and report on their parents, give them a little biscuit or a bit of chocolate or some treat or some favor or a pat on the head or whatever. Children are pretty easy to bribe, I would imagine. So turning the children against the parents, turning the men against the women, the elderly against the young, the Christians against the non-Christians, the immigrants against the natives. It's the blue team against the red team. Divide, all the way down. Divide and conquer, divide and conquer. That's what it is. Every time. Every level. Always. Pretty much probably 99% of the content and the information that's put out there is put out there for the purpose of divide and conquer. All right. Sport. There will be no place for sport in the new normal. Both professional and amateur sport will be outlawed as unnecessary and irrelevant and a waste of essential resources. Parks, playing fields, and golf courses will be allowed to go wild. The only sports allowed will be esports, though without the live spectators. Well, I mean, I wouldn't mind if they let the golf courses go wild, you know? But it'd be better if they... I was going to say it'd be better if they grew food on the golf course, but they've probably put so much weed killer, glyphosate and Roundup on the golf courses that you wouldn't want to grow food in that soil. So we'll rewild the golf courses. How about that? I bet that'll never happen. All right, starvation. The world's new unelected leaders believe that the world is massively overpopulated. They wish to deal with this by reducing the number of babies being born and by increasing the number of people dying. In the Ukrainian genocide known as the Holodomor, which took place in the Ukraine in 1932 to 1933, around 12 million people are believed to have died of starvation. It seems certain that food and water shortages are going to be used to rid the population of the several billion individuals who are considered surplus to requirements by a cabal of billionaires. And I do have a book to recommend on the Holodomor. Let me grab it. It's behind that guitar over there. Now this is one only for the serious reader, and you'll see why in a minute. It's called Taboo Genocide, Holodomor 1933 and the Extermination of Ukraine. The Triad, FDR, Stalin and Hitler, a strategy for war and peace and the New World Order. This is volume 2. I can't find a volume 1 anywhere online, but it's by Chris Dietrich, and it's a bit of a whopper. You're looking at almost 1,000 pages here. And it's pretty small text as well. But it's a lot of detail, a lot of context. I haven't read the full thing. I've dipped in and out here and there. But I just want to tell people about that because that is one atrocity which doesn't get a lot of attention. It doesn't get a lot of focus. People overlook it all the time. Why could that be, I wonder? Well, I'll let you think about why that might be. But yeah, Taboo Genocide, Chris Dietrich. I wonder how many videos that would take to read through on the channel. 1,000-page book. Probably looking at about... You're looking at, I reckon, at least 30 videos. So we won't be attempting that one anytime soon. All right. Statues. Statues are being removed all over the world because of complaints by Black Lives Matters protesters. For example, in Exeter in England, there's a campaign which may well have been succeeded by the time you read this. Which may well have succeeded to remove a statue of a British war hero. Campaigners want to remove the statue to General Buller, who won the Victoria Cross, because he's said to represent patriarchal structures and negatively impacts on anyone who doesn't define themselves in binary gender terms. The campaign to remove the statue has nothing to do with General Buller, of course. It's part of a wider campaign to destroy our history so that we can all become of the New World Order of slaves. Stockholm Syndrome. The Stockholm Syndrome is a condition in which hostages develop a psychological attachment to their captors. The term originated in 1973 when 4 hostages were taken during a bank robbery in Stockholm, Sweden. The hostages refused to testify against their captors and indeed defended them. In 2020, it was difficult to understand why so many members of the public were acting like cowards, behaving obediently, and accepting the blatant nonsense they were being fed. In the end, I came to the conclusion that having been filled with fear, they were accepting the instructions of the authoritarian figures in government. It was a form of mass hysteria, a new version of the Stockholm Syndrome. I mean, it's an incredibly important question, and I think it has a lot more layers to the explanation than what Vernon Coleman laid out here, because this whole event was made possible because of the previous 100 years leading up to it. And that involves the education, the culture creation, the religion, the politics. All that stuff was laying the groundwork, shaping the minds and providing the on-ramp to make this event go the way it did and be as successful as it was. And it wasn't wholly successful, but it was pretty successful. You know, a lot of people fell for it. All right, this next section is suicide. In the US, a survey of 5,412 adults for the CDC showed that 41% had reported at least one adverse mental or behavioral health problem. But among the 17 to 24-year-olds, the figure rose to 75%. Whoa, wow. Anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts were commonplace. Over 10% of adults had considered suicide in the 30 days prior to being questioned. In late October 2020, the London Ambulance Service in the UK revealed that they were dealing with 37 suicides each day. In 2019, they were dealing with 22 suicides or attempted suicides each day. It's reasonable to assume that the increase in the number of people trying to kill themselves or killing themselves was a direct consequence of the events of 2020. Yeah, of course it was. And they knew that was going to happen. They knew that putting that much pressure on people, that much fear, that much anxiety, that much stress and tension was going to tip plenty of people over the edge as part of the plan. All right, suppression. Those who doubt that the events of 2020 were planned might like to reflect on two things. First, everything that happened was global. So-called mistakes occurred in many countries. Second, there was a clampdown on discussion, debate, or the publication of news relating to the events of 2020. I think there's way more evidence than those 2 points that he just made to back up the idea that it was global. But yeah, I mean, that's a big question, right? This is the first time something like this was done at the global level. You got to look into and ask, how did that happen? Why did it happen? Why did so many countries go along with it? None of them really deviated from the script. There was slight variations here and there, but for the most part, everybody was on board all over the planet. Okay, sustainable. This is the most dangerous and destructive word in the world. You will see it everywhere. Sustainability should be approached with great caution. It invariably precedes the arrival of trouble, penury, and hunger. Sustainable development means oppression, suppression, and a complete lack of freedom or democracy. And it also means austerity, permanent austerity. And the last section for tonight's reading is a quote from A.C. Swinburne, which is, "There are worse things waiting for men than death." And yeah, that reminds me of isn't there a quote in the Bible? Is it from Revelations? Saying in those days they longed for death, but they could not have it. Death would not come. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not very good with Bible quotes. But that is the end of tonight's reading. I think we ticked off a really good portion tonight. We get through a lot more when I'm not preambling my way through a ramble for an hour and a half at the beginning. And I think we'll finish the book on the next reading. There's not much left at all. So we've got one episode left in this series, and then we're going to be moving on. But I'm going to quickly review the comments. I noticed there's been a lot of activity over on YouTube tonight, which is lovely indeed. I'm glad you're all getting along so well. I assume you're getting along so well. You know, I can't see lots of angry emojis. I got thumbs up and smiley faces and hearts. So that's good stuff. That's really nice. I don't think I can catch up on all of this. Tarot Galaxy, though, hello. Welcome. Smile. Oh, so I put up flyers of Huxley prediction in New York. They were gone in a couple of hours. Yeah, that's great. I was putting up stickers and the white rose stuff, and I was sticking them on buses and bus stops. I put lots on a bus stop outside my house, and every day I would check it to see, is it still there? And they lasted quite a while, but some of them disappeared very, very quickly. Very quickly. But yeah. Adam is here. How are you doing, sir? Says awesome read. Yeah, this is a great book. I think it's a really good book. It's entertaining. It's humorous. The sarcasm, the biting wit, and the kind of satirical, sardonic tone comes through really well. And it's a relief from some of the dry, sort of more academic stuff we've read, which, it's not that high in entertainment value, let's say. And I can sometimes struggle to bring a bit of humor to these kind of topics. But this, Vernon Coleman, he's definitely more entertaining to read than some of the books we've done on the channel. And I think he hit some really good points. And that whole section today on social credit is really important. That might be worth turning that into a clip and uploading the shorter version, because even if everything he forecasts and predicts doesn't come true, which it won't, because nobody can predict the future with 100% accuracy, just 10% of what he described would be close enough to hell. Every step toward that scenario that he painted is really it's a step closer to hell, and we're really not just stepping there one step at a time. We're like sprinting there as a society, putting smartphones in the hands of little children, all this surveillance technology that we allow into our lives and our homes and we rely on. And yeah, we're heading there very quickly. And we gotta tell more people about it, raise our concerns, point out what's happening, and really fight that relentless, never-ending battle with the hearts and minds of those around us, those we love and care about, those we are interacting with on a day-to-day basis. That is the battlefield. It's really it's a mind battle, and it's who can. So my piece of advice really is just, you got to make it very clear that you come from a place of love and care and concern and compassion. Otherwise, they're not going to hear it. If they think you're just trying to beat them or make them feel ignorant or stupid, or if you're trying to put them down because they don't know about this stuff, if they get any sense that you're bragging or gloating or egotistical in trying to talk about and describe these things, they're going to switch off, and it's going to be impossible to get to them. But so you've got to ground it in this, like, look, I'm concerned and I care about you and I love you, and here's what I'm worried about and here's what I know. I really appreciate your attention to just hear me out and see what you think, and be very sincere and genuine in trying to have these conversations. It's tough. It's easier said than done, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but that is really where the battle is. I want to understate and remind people of that. So Frank Lennon says, great read this humid evening. Well done, and you even managed to stay awake. It was touch and go. I'm not going to lie. There was, particularly in this last 40 minutes, I've been a bit like, okay, I'm getting tired now. So I'm going to get out of here and go get some rest, hopefully. Adam says, the surveillance we're currently living in would be hell to those 100 years ago. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, the Overton window, is that what it's called? No, there's another term for it, isn't there? But it's just that gradual normalization of things. And the next generation coming up, they'll know even less privacy and more surveillance, and it'll be totally normal to them. And they won't even be able to. They won't even see an issue with it. Like, it's just the way it is. Just like, what can you do about it? Can't do anything, right? Kelly Norris says, in 2009 there was a tiny pandemic panic, but I don't think enough people heard of it, so it fizzled out. Yeah, they did a lot of dry runs. They prepped us with films and media, and they ran simulations, and then of course there was Event 201, and then they just went for it, and it was largely successful, unfortunately. But they did roll it back as well, and we haven't heard much about it since. Although they circulate news stories here and there every now and again. But there was an announcement recently that the UK is going to do the largest ever pandemic preparedness exercise. I forget the name of it. That might be one to keep an eye on. If it's anything like Event 201, Cool. Right, I'm going to love you and leave you at that point, I think. It's very good to be back doing these again. We've got one more one more episode of Endgame. And then we are going to be moving on to the man himself, Mr. Zbig Brzezinski. And we're going to be reading Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. It's written in the 70s, but a good friend of mine was reading it recently and said, even though it's written in the 70s, it feels like it could have been written yesterday. So that's coming up next. I intend to be back next Friday to finish off Endgame. But, you know, schedules are unpredictable at the moment, so we will see. I'll announce it on my Telegram channel when I am doing this again. So that's the best place to stay up to date. I hang out on Telegram a lot more than the other places. So, final reminder, allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews. If you want to support or get involved or stay in touch, send me an email, all that good stuff. Download my little guitar music bundle, send a donation, join the book club, etc. It's lots of stuff to get involved in, and that is where you can find it all. One-stop shop, allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews. Thank you very much for your kind attention and time this evening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a good one. Try having a difficult conversation with somebody who really doesn't want to hear it. That's your homework, you know. And let me know how it goes. I would love to hear back because I think that is where we need to focus our efforts. So with that said, enjoy yourselves. Take good care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you next Friday, hopefully, if my son gives me permission. And until then, God bless.